gonna make my favorite roast turkey dinner. Oof, that's a big turkey. I don't understand why our mothers used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to roast a turkey. I can't figure it out. I think they have this thing about bacteria. A 12-pound turkey should roast in about 2.5 hours. And it'll be moist and delicious. Oh, that's a beautiful bird. So the first thing I'm gonna do is take out the giblets, like the neck and the, well, ooh, it's cold, it's wet. And I'm gonna save it for stock later. And this looks beautiful. And then I'm gonna pat it dry. So I'm gonna put some salt in the middle and some freshly ground pepper. Just make sure it's really well seasoned. We're not gonna do stuffing, you know? It's enough with the stuffing. I'm gonna put all kinds of things in the cavity that are gonna give it lots of flavor. So I'm gonna stuff it with onion, forget peeling it, just chop the whole thing up and just put it right into the inside of the turkey. It's great. And then maybe big sprigs of thyme. And then we're gonna have lemon. I'm gonna just put big chunks of lemon in, just like that. It's gonna be so delicious. And then maybe the last thing is a big chunk of garlic. Put a big chunk of it right in the middle of the turkey. And then the last thing is I'm gonna just take these little wings and tuck them under, just so they're not flapping around in the pan and that they burn before the turkey's finished cooking. You're basically just doing that with the turkey. It doesn't mind. So I've got about 4 tablespoons of butter melted in here. Just brush it nicely on the outside of the bird. And then salt and pepper. Remember, it's a big bird, so salt it really well. And some pepper in the pan. So about 2.5 hours at 350 degrees, and we're gonna have a fabulous turkey. Oh, love it. Doesn't that look gorgeous? So I'm just gonna wrap it up with aluminum foil. Really makes a difference if you let it rest for about 20 minutes. Just let the juices get into the meat, and the whole thing will taste fabulous. I carve a turkey the same way I carve a chicken. So I'll show you what I do. I'm gonna take the legs off. Those are the legs, perfectly cooked. And then I'm gonna cut up the dark meat a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna carve the dark meat first on this side. Okay, and then I'm gonna carve the turkey breast. What I'm gonna do is take the whole breast off, actually, in one piece, just the way I do with a chicken. So it looks perfectly cooked. I'm just gonna slice it. It's so much easier to do this way. And I like when the slices aren't so incredibly thin that they fall apart. So, just like that. Okay. Let's see, what do we do here? And maybe a secco pear here. Doesn't look half bad, does it?
I started with a 20-pound turkey, patted it dry, took out the bag of giblets, of course, and now I am going to truss the turkey, which just means tie the legs. So basically you just want to crisscross the legs and just tie them, and this makes sure that the turkey stays intact while it bakes. Okay, so what I did was just transferred the rack into the roasting pan, and I'm gonna put it into the oven for the first stage. And for that stage, I've got to cover the whole thing with foil. Here I go. So now, Alex, let's go to the oven, okay? Okay, 20-pounder. Hi-ya! So this is gonna go into a 275-degree oven. It's gonna bake for about 10 minutes per pound for the first stage, so I'll see you back here in 3.5 hours. Okay, so we're gonna move right along and get some herb citrus butter ready to smear all over the turkey. So I've got 2 sticks of salted butter, which is important. And I'm adding the zest of 2 lemons and 1 orange, and then some gorgeous fragrant herbs. I've got sage and 2 tablespoons of rosemary, about a tablespoon of sage, and then chopped thyme, about a tablespoon. I love fresh herbs. They make me happy. I love them in the morning. I love them in the night. I love them full stop. so the butter is all smeared together. You see that, Alex?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't that look yummy? Okay, so let's go to the oven. So, oh gosh, I don't want to do this. Oh,
You're getting your workout in.
oh my gosh. That's so heavy. Now, I want to warn you, before I take this foil off, it is not impressive looking at this stage. It's very pale, okay? But that's exactly what it should look like at this stage. Now, you can be neat about it and just smear it with a spoon, but I have never had more luck than when I just do it with my hands. So basically, you just want to smear this all over.
Getting a nice massage.
It is. It's just like giving it a massage. It's very strange, but. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a beautiful golden skin when it finishes roasting. Not only that, but it's going to add flavor to the drippings, and that's what we're going to use to make gravy. So all of this is going to make perfect sense before it's all said and done. Okay, so I'm going to put it back into the oven, but before I do that, I want to put a meat thermometer in the leg, and you want to go right behind the joint, deep into the turkey, and that way you know that the temperature is basically registering the coldest part of the turkey, so you know it'll be done if this is right. So I'm going to leave it uncovered, put it back into the oven, turn up the heat to 350 degrees, and let it finish roasting. It's going to take about an hour and a half, and I'll baste it as I go. Okay? See you back here then. I think the turkey's ready. You ready for this?
Oh, I'm ready.
Ooh, it's... Oh, hello, my beautiful baby. Oh gosh, it looks amazing. The temperature's at 165, and that's when I like to take the turkey out. It'll keep cooking for, 10 or 15 minutes when you pull it out. So you don't want to overcook it or dry it out. So I need to let the turkey rest before I carve it. So I'm just gonna loosely cover it with foil. Lots of foil on Thanksgiving. And then I will come back and carve in a little bit. I'm here to show the kids what carving a turkey is all about, so I'm gonna do my level best. I like to start with the breast. So I cut down the center. Alex, do you wanna get this? And there's a little breastbone, and you wanna cut right down either side of it. And so now you have two halves of the breast. I never wanna kind of cut it short and not get all of that beautiful meat. This is a juicy turkey. Here is a beautiful breast half, okay?
Yum.
So I'll put that over to the side and I'll pull the other one off. It helps to have a very sharp knife. Lad who? I mean, look at this perfectly cooked turkey though.
Oh, baby.
It's gorgeous. All right. Now I'm just gonna keep going. It's just gonna take me about 4 seconds. So isn't that a gorgeous platter? And then all that you need to do after that is just garnish the platter. And I like to do oranges. Paige, you wanna come help me?
Sure.
And then some sage leaves. I love the combination of citrus and herbs. It's so pretty. What do you say, Paige? Should we go on down to the house and leave these guys behind?
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Happy Thanksgiving. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, this is beautiful. Roasted Thanksgiving turkey, all carved, put on a platter with some garnishes. Absolutely perfect. Happy Turkey Day.
2 smaller turkeys, one that's spatchcocked or butterflied, and it'll cook a little quicker than the traditional one that Katie's made. These are like 2 10-pound birds. And what I like about this is, this one we're gonna carve up and eat. This one we're gonna put whole on the table. And if we get to it, we carve it. If we don't, it's perfect for leftovers.
That's right.
And it's a great centerpiece.
I also want to say that for everybody at home, a lot of people don't have an oven that fits a 20-pound turkey.
That's right.
This is a perfect solution and one that I think you're going to love. So if you're using fresh turkeys, which we are today, make sure you get them out and make them room temperature for about 2 or 3 hours. Frozen, you want to get them in at least 2 to 3 days and thaw them in the refrigerator.
For every 5 pounds, you need 24 hours.
Yes, so people don't give enough time. Okay,
Yeah.
I am going to make, it's a 2-part rub. First rub is a dry brine. Okay? And I'm gonna give you half, and we're gonna have like a little turkey off here.
Okay.
Okay, cracked pepper, granulated garlic powder, celery salt,
Love
and
the
granulated
celery.
Garlic.
Oh, smell that.
Onion
powder.
Oh, onion powder.
Smell.
Isn't that beautiful? I'm gonna put that right there. And we're gonna toss.
Oh, wow.
You can do this whenever you want. You can do this the day before. All this stuff can be done. And I'm gonna give half to Katie. And then basically, we're gonna get in there with your hands and rub everywhere on this turkey. Use up all of it. Really
Go on the
important.
inside too?
Inside, outside, underneath, really important. This is gonna go into the refrigerator overnight.
And these are dry, patted dry.
Yes. And it's gonna make the flavor so much better. And it's almost like, you know, it's a cure, almost you're curing it like a brine. I personally do not brine a wet brine. I like dry brine, just like that.
I'm the same. It's just a mess to do the wet brine.
Okay, I'm gonna wash my hands.
And I noticed you left the breastbone into your butterfly or spatchcock, which is
So you can have your butcher do this. If you want to go to foodnetwork.com, you can get all the way to do this. Both of these are gonna go in the fridge overnight, uncovered. Uncovered.
So
you want to
it gets nice
have
and dry.
that salt is gonna dry out the skin and make it even crispier.
We like a crispy skin.
Yeah, so many times it's not crispy enough.
I'm team crispy,
Oh.
so when you spatchcock it like that, more surface area to get nice and roasted.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
No,
Okay,
I'm
so-
not. Can I have a
Put
couple
me
more
in,
minutes?
Coach. Put me in.
All right, so
We're on Thursday.
Thursday, we're gonna make a wet marinade. First, let me take these out and show you what they look like. Here's the spatchcock one. Look, see that skin is dried out?
That's right.
Okay.
Taut. It's taut.
Taut. And here, oh, isn't that beautiful? And what I love about these birds is like it's such a manageable size. I think everybody at home is gonna
10
say.
pounds.
It's 10 pounds. It's still probably feed 8 people, right?
Easily.
Okay, so we're gonna make a wet marinade. Lemon zest,
Interesting.
shallots. I'm gonna make half for you, Katie.
Okay.
2. Parsley, tarragon, thyme, oregano. All right, and then olive oil. You put that over there. And we're gonna make it just so you have enough to make it a paste.
I was gonna say, is it a paste?
Okay, just a paste. If we need more, we'll add more olive oil. Now notice there's no salt in here because I already have a real nice coating of salt in both of these birds here.
And by doing that dry brine, the salt soaks down into the meat. So it's not just salty on the skin, it's salty all the way through.
Okay, so these birds are room temperature, very important. They're out for about at least an hour room temperature. And Katie, are you ready? And we're gonna do the same thing. A nice bath of these beautiful herbs and olive oil. Oh, get that lemon in there.
GZ, do I put it in my roasting pan?
Put it in your roasting pan, and we're gonna put it in the oven. Let's get some inside here.
That's a happy bird right
And a
there.
happy bird here.
You're doing it justice.
I mean,
Okay, she has in the roasting pan, I have in my roasting pan the same thing. Carrots, onions, some fennel. It's not a recipe per se. It's vegetables to get you a nice juice and have this bird sit on top so it sits on top and doesn't roast on the bottom. Okay, I'm gonna wash my hands also. We have our oven preheated to 400 degrees.
Okay.
400. Okay, I'm gonna wash my hands.
So you're not going under like the breast skin
No.
or anything like that, no?
Don't have to do that.
You don't have to do that.
No. Okay, Katie's gonna stuff her bird with some lemons and fresh thyme.
Oh, good.
Be very simple here. You don't have to use a lot of in the stuffing, really. Okay, Katie's finishing up with some chicken stock.
So GZ, there's no roasting rack in here.
No, just like that, on the vegetables.
that's your rack. It's a natural rack.
It's
And when they
nature's rack.
caramelize and they get all incredibly
I think I like
flavorful,
that
it's
better. I
fantastic.
like this.
All right.
That's stuff to watch.
While she's
right?
finishing it up, I'm gonna take my, look how beautiful that is, right? I'm gonna put it on my vegetables, same vegetables, on a flat pan, no wine, and then we're gonna take a race to the oven.
beat you.
You ready?
Well, don't run, guys. Let me get that for you.
This is heavy. There's no running with this.
All right, I'm gonna put mine in the top.
All right, here.
There you go.
It's out. Here, I'll get that.
Okay, so
Oh, like a glove. Look at that.
about 2 hours at 400 degrees, and the one on top is gonna take a little less time because it's spatchcocked.
Can I also point something out
Yes.
about your spatchcock, not to destroy the heat? But look at the real estate this is taking up.
That's
You could
what
fit
he's
2
saying.
more racks in there. Whereas if you put a whole bird in your oven, chances
There you
are
go.
you're not getting anything else in that oven.
So you have to remember, so I like to cook it about 2.5 hours at 400, but remember, it's all about temperature. 155 degrees, the internal temperature of the thickest part of the thigh, that baby will be perfect, and it needs to rest for 1 hour. So are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, so a little trick of resting. I take my whole bird and I rest it on one of these reusable aluminum pans that you can use again.
That's
Yes.
right.
You don't waste aluminum foil.
No.
Look at
have
you
it.
being
Look
parsimonious.
at you, parsimonious.
Okay, so we're gonna make it look pretty, okay? Don't touch.
Sorry, I didn't.
We're gonna make it look pretty, right? And that goes,
Okay, push it in there.
This is the turkey for the graham.
that's right
Yeah.
in the middle of the table. Isn't that beautiful?
Beautiful.
Hey, why don't you show everybody where the thickest part of the thigh is? A lot of people get
Yeah, thickest part of the thigh.
Right here,
Right.
like right in there. Okay.
And it's not on the bone,
Yeah,
too.
so
Wanna make
here
sure.
we have the spatchcock, and I'm gonna carve
Oh,
this. Look how
gorgeous.
beautiful. Okay.
Gorgeous.
All right, Katie,
Gorgeous.
all that work.
Turn
Okay, let's
that
get
around.
it.
Look how pretty she is.
Okay, let's get that here. All right, now, just gonna take it apart by taking, watch how easy this is, right?
Yeah, my
And this is
mouth.
what I love about the spatchcocking. It's so easy, it just pulls apart.
What was...
Isn't that beautiful?
Juicy.
Juicy. And I take a board, I use a board with grooves to catch all that broth.
Gotta have that groovy board.
I'm gonna go over here.
And when you're planning how to cook your turkey and your timing, be sure that you plan that extra hour to let it rest.
It's so important. The resting is important. If you're worried about temperature, I always say that's what hot gravy is for. And really, the temperature doesn't go down so much to where you feel like you're eating cold meat.
No,
I'd rather
exactly.
juicy and warm than hot and dry.
Totally agree.
So this gravy's made out of those pan drippings.
This is only the pan drippings that I've reduced and reduced and reduced. There's no
ruin there.
flour,
Like
no
an
roux.
immersion blender, you blended it or something?
None whatsoever. So I'm just gonna take this off the bone.
Oh, look at that grave.
I'll drink it.
It is...
So good.
It's so shiny. That's how you know, you know?
And it's bouncy.
All right. You can never have too much gravy.
Katie Lee loves her gravy.
She
Yes.
loves her gravy.
So what you get when you cut it off the bone, you get the juiciness stays. It doesn't get dry. And when you cut it really thin, after a few seconds,
Air gets to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah? Come on now, we ready, GZ, come on. Please, sir.
Geoffrey, that is one juicy turkey.
well,
And all the flavor of those herbs really infused it, got into that gravy.
it's like a
It's so delicious.
I'm making my grilled butterfly turkey with a lemon pepper glaze. Very simple. Let's start with the glaze. All right, in my pan here, I'm just gonna bloom the pepper. To bloom a spice, all you have to do is either toast it or heat it in oil to amplify the flavor. So just some oil and some pepper go down, and then just move it around. You're gonna start bubbling real soon. You're gonna smell that pepper. All right. So I've got some honey here. It's gonna bring in some sweet and relax the pepper, but it's also gonna help us glaze. And some Worcestershire sauce right in. I just move that around. Sounds so good. All right, we've got ourselves some lemon zest and lemon juice. So that's gonna go right into our pan with the glaze. Just stir that around. All right, while this cooks down and starts to reduce and become our glaze for our turkey, let's get that bad boy onto the grill. Oh, this big boy. All right. Now, this is a butterflied turkey. It's gonna take less time to cook because it's butterflied. So first thing I wanna do is get under the skin, and you can see how my finger is between the skin and the flesh of the bird. I got some butter here. Just put those cubes in there. And that's gonna help flavor up the meat. Just push that butter in there. Now, this turkey was brined. That just means I soaked it in water with sage, thyme, and lemon. You're gonna let it hang out in there for about 3 days so it really gets into the meat. Okay, now let's treat the skin. So I'm gonna do a little bit of olive oil. I kind of like to massage it on. Make sure you get it everywhere. And then, because I knew my hands were gonna be all turkeyed up, I've got a salt and pepper blend right here. Just gonna pull from and all over the top. Don't forget the legs. All right, there you have it. So I've got my grill set, 400 degrees. You're gonna start it skin side down on the direct heat, okay? Give it a nice little press. You can see some of the peppercorn and the thyme, still some of that flavoring from the brine makes you feel really good about all that time you took. So this is gonna take about 10 to 15 minutes. We're just going for color on that skin side. All right, let's check on this turkey. Oh, yes. All right, bird. Look at this baby. Oh, come on. Come on. Now that's a fire. Beautiful. Now, remember this glaze? Just get that glaze over the top. Look at how luscious this is. And this is the perfect texture. You don't want it too drippy, so it'll just drip right off your bird and go right into the grates. I'm gonna close this up and cook this bird for, 1 to 2 hours. It really depends on the weight. Don't forget those wings. All right, everything is glazed. I'm gonna cover this bird up. All right. Okay, I think it's time. Oh, that's a beautiful bird, let me tell you. Now let me get this baby off. Remember, it's gonna take less time to cook. Oh, it's so gentle and tender because it's butterflied. Look at that beautiful baby. Look at that. Look at that. Come on. And the skin looks so delicious. Oh, look at that. I just want to get in there, get some of this skin, crispy goodness. Look at that. It's deliciousness on 10. I'm gonna cover this baby up so it can do the rest of its carryover cooking. So delicious.
My deep fried turkey breasts with cranberry mayo. They're super juicy on the inside with a thick, crunchy breading on the outside. They're basically just giant pieces of fried chicken. My turkey breasts have been brining in a tasty buttermilk bath for 4 hours. I've taken them out and allowed them to come to room temperature. And now all I have to do is dredge and fry. So I have my dredging mixture here, which is flour, cornstarch, paprika, baking powder, salt, and some poultry seasoning. Rather than just put the turkey directly in here, I'm first gonna drizzle in some of my reserved buttermilk brine. I only need about 1/4 cup. And what this is gonna do is help form some clumps of this dry mixture so that you get a thicker coating of the breading. So you get more of the best part. Now the most efficient way to do this is to get in here with my hands. That's what God made soap. Just get this in here and get it completely coated in my dredging mixture. Make sure to fill it up with the clumps too. I'll gently lower this into my hot oil here. It's heating to 350 degrees, and I'm gonna lower it away from me in case it splatters. This is the moment. Listen to that sizzle. It's partying already. I'm gonna fry this for about 15 minutes until it's golden brown all over with an internal temperature of 160 degrees. I realize that dinner gets all the focus on Thanksgiving, but my actual favorite Thanksgiving meal is obviously the leftover sandwich. It's the holiday that keeps on giving. This is one handsome turkey. I'm gonna remove it to my wire rack. And putting it on a rack like this as opposed to a paper towel prevents the bottom from getting soggy. While it's still hot, I'll sprinkle it with some flaky salt, a little lemon zest, and sumac for a lovely sour quality. That is a show-stopping piece of meat. Okay, I'm gonna fry up the rest of my turkey and then whip up a cranberry mayo for serving. My fried turkey is resting, so it'll be extra juicy when I slice it up, which leaves the perfect amount of time to make my sauce. It'll be creamy and tart, and a really nice stand-in for gravy since I don't have any pan drippings to make a gravy with. I'm gonna start with some mayonnaise, add in some canned cranberry sauce, a little lemon juice, pepper. I'll stir it up. This will be the ideal spread on my leftover sandwich later too. By this time, my turkey has come up to an internal temperature of 165 for peak juiciness. I'll get some good thick slices on a bias. Here she is. I mean, this has got to be the easiest turkey carving experience. No bones. I'll fan this out onto my serving platter. I'll slice up the other 2 pieces. And in case anyone needs a little more lemon, like my mom, some wedges to nestle in. Look at this. It's terrific for Thanksgiving.
I have some bread here that I cut into slices and I'm gonna toast for my stuffing. When I was a kid, my sister and I would sit in front of the little black and white TV and cut toast squares for our stuffing. That was always our job while we watched the Macy's Day Parade. It's one of my favorite food memories. So I've got my stuffing base going here. I've got onions and celery. I threw a little garlic in there. Good stuff happening. So I have some spicy sausage. I'm gonna go ahead and whip these guys out of the casings, kind of break them up into little sort of bite-sizey pieces. All right, so we just get it in there and kind of chop it all up. I'm gonna give my hands a rinse. Some apples, some sage. I'm gonna grab my walnuts. And I'm gonna get chopping, get these guys into my stuffing. I have about a half a bunch of sage that I chopped and I'm adding to my stuffing. So I have onions and garlic and celery, my sausage and my apples and walnuts in there. So this is smelling huge and flavorful, and that sage, when you add it, just gives a burst of herby, earthy goodness. So we need a little liquid in there, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue on with my apple theme today with a little bit of apple cider, about a cup or so. Good stuff. We're gonna let that cook down. We're gonna add a little chicken stock to that in a bit, but this is looking beautiful. I'm gonna turn this down. Ah, happy, happy girl I am. I toasted and diced up some very rustic country bread. I took the crusts off, toasted it just so it's stiff but no color. Otherwise that would make it rock hard. And it's all diced up. That takes me right back to my childhood. That was always my job. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and add this sausagey, appley goodness to this. Oh, ah, good. So we're gonna mix this together, and I'm gonna go ahead and moisten up the whole shooting match with some chicken stock. So here we go, some chicken stock. Okay. And you know what else we're gonna do? We're gonna give this a little taste as we're doing this. And you know what? We need a bit of seasoning. Oh, this is gonna be good, good stuff. Sage really just brings such a lovely earthiness to this with the sausage and the apples. Like you get that spicy sausage and the sweet apple, and then the celery and the onions. This is a great stuffing. Beautiful. Now I've got my baking dish right here. A little sausage for me. Okay, my baking dish right here. Go ahead and get this guy all in there. Look at that. That was a cinch. Okay. Okay, so, let's get this guy in the oven. I need a couple of these guys, because guess what it is? It's turkey time. So, here we go, bottom oven. See you later, stuffing. Yes, all right. So, it's brown and crispy on top, and that's exactly what we're looking for. All right, stuffing time. Apple, sausage, sage, walnuts, woohoo!
It's called stuffing if you stuff it in the bird. It's called dressing if you put it in a pan and bake it. So I'm gonna make dressing, basically. So I started by cooking some sausage in the skillet. I took it out and put it in a bowl. And so the flavor of the sausage is still in there. So I'm gonna add some mirepoix, which is nothing more than, sorry, what happened here? Nothing more than onions, carrots, and celery. Then I have some chopped fresh thyme, and I'll add it to the veggies, and then a little bit of salt. I'm gonna crank up the heat, and I'm gonna cook these veggies until they start to sweat. And by that time, I'll probably be sweating too. Don't go away. So the stuffing needs liquid, so I'm gonna add an entire carton of low sodium chicken broth. You can use veggie broth or turkey broth, any kind of broth. And I'm gonna add some ground sage, which is a very quintessential Thanksgiving herb. And then thyme, more thyme. There's fresh thyme in here, and this is dried thyme. And then I like to add a tiny pinch of turmeric. If you add too much, it will turn whatever you're cooking like bright orange yellow. So I just add, seriously, a pinch, and it adds just a tiny bit of like golden, beautiful color without turning your stuffing fluorescent orange. Okay, so that is looking great. Look at this, Alex. Basically, it looks like soup at this stage. I've got 2 kinds of bread. And girls and boys, if you're making Thanksgiving dinner and you've got to make the stuffing, you have to plan ahead of time. I actually cut up this bread 2 days ago and put them on sheet pans so they could totally dry out.
Dropped one.
Uh-oh.
Run away.
You want the bread to be completely dry, and listen. That's how dry that bread is. Now, I am a big believer in cornbread stuffing, and so I also made cornbread like 2.4 days ago, and I cut it into cubes, and it has been drying out too. So we got a mix of French bread and cornbread. So look at this, Alex. Down in the bottom is the sausage, okay? I love sausage in stuffing / dressing. Okay, so the liquid is now liquidy and hot. So basically what you want to do is grab a couple of ladles at a time and get the veggies and the liquid, spoon it over, do a little tossing. You don't want to pour it in all at once. Oh, it smells so good. Couple more ladles and toss. So I'm going to do the same thing until I've used up all the liquid. Fresh parsley. All right, should we put this in the oven?
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to bake the stuffing at 350 degrees until the top gets nice and crisp and it's all heated through. Oh, it smells so good in this kitchen, I'm telling you. Here is the dressing / stuffing / dressing. Look, is that beautiful or what? And you can't tell this, but the surface of the bread is just as crisp as can be and then so soft underneath.
So today I'm making my pretzel stuffing with mustard and beer. It's gonna be sweet and tangy and soft and salty. I am obsessed with this stuffing. To start, I'm gonna chop up an onion and 4 stalks of celery, and I'm gonna finely chop this so it mixes in nicely with my stuffing. And same for my celery, I'm gonna use 4 stalks. And I don't mind using the leaves. I know a lot of people get rid of them, but they have more flavor there. Okie doke. My vegetables are chopped. I'm gonna get some butter heating into a pan so that I can cook my vegetables and reserve the rest to pour over the stuffing before it goes into the oven. I have my pan at a medium-high, and now I'm gonna add my vegetables. I'll season these with a good pinch of salt to bring out those flavors and also to help them soften. I'll stir them around, and I'm just gonna cook these about 7 to 10 minutes until they're soft and translucent, and in the meantime, I'll mix together my wet ingredients. I'll crack in 2 eggs, and these will help bind my mixture together. A 1.5 cups of chicken stock, which will add loads of flavor. And for a vegetarian stuffing, vegetable stock will absolutely work. And now the fun part, I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of mustard because you really cannot have pretzels without mustard. And now I'm gonna add a little bit of beer here. This is a German lager, and this is gonna add acidity, it's gonna add tanginess, and any alcohol in here will cook right out. And next I'll grab some honey. A couple tablespoons is perfect. I'll whisk it all together. The last thing I'm gonna do is chop up some parsley before I combine everything. Okay, then now it's time to combine everything. So I have a bowl of torn pretzel bread here that has been dried out in an oven at 200 degrees for an hour. And that helps maintain the structure of the bread when it gets combined with the liquid. This is a great way to use stale bread too, and you don't have to use pretzel bread. I'm gonna get my vegetables. I'm gonna pour these directly into the bowl with the bread. So the liquid really softens this bread a lot, and it's important that the bread doesn't get mushy and too soft, so that's why it's good to toast the bread before mixing it with this liquid. The mixture is gonna still look a little bit liquidy when you pour it into the pan, but the bread is gonna continue to absorb that liquid in the oven, so that's what you want. The best part, I'm gonna pour more butter over it. This will bake at 375 for about 45 minutes until it's set and golden brown and a little crispy on top.
In my experience, if you don't make mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving, somebody's going to complain. So I'm going to show you my classic mashed potatoes and 3 variations just to turn up the volume. But first, I'm going to show you something like mashed potatoes that's even more unique. It's celery root and apple puree. I made it for Thanksgiving a few years ago. Everybody loved it. About 1 cup of chunks of fennel. You want to cut it and have it flat on the board so you don't end up cutting your fingers off. Not a good thing to do for Thanksgiving. I'm just going to put the fennel right in. And since this has a really complex flavor, I'm going to put in 3 golden delicious apples and some Yukon Gold potato, about 8 ounces. Yukon Gold's great. It's got a really great texture. And then the last thing I want to do is a celery root. This is one of the ugliest looking vegetables, but so delicious. It's also called celeriac. And I need about 2 cups chopped. This is the trick to celery root. Cut off the end and then stand it up before you peel it, and it's really stable. Okay, and then cut it in half. And then cut it in 3/4 inch chunks. Okay, now for some seasoning. 1½ teaspoons of salt. Salt's really important. Really brings out the flavor of all the vegetables and the apples. 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Give it a little heat. Give it a big stir. It's going to cook in the butter for about 5 to 7 minutes until the vegetables and the apples start to soften. I can already smell them. Okay, now I'm going to add even more flavor. 1/2 cup of apple cider. Okay, lid on, done. Oh, the vegetables are all done. The celery root and fennel, apples, little potato. Potato gives it a little thickening, which is great. Now I'm just going to add about 1/4 cup of cream, which is going to give it a really silky kind of texture, a little thickening. Just put it right in. Turn off the heat, and just put all these vegetables right through the food mill. You can do this in a blender, you can do it in a food processor, but I just find they end up being very smooth, kind of like baby food. This one has a coarse blade. It has different kinds of blades, so it can be smoother or coarser. And I really like the coarsest blade. And then what you do is just turn it. No electricity, just a little hand crank. Isn't that great? It's so elegant and simple. Perfect. Okay. More vegetables. This is a great vegetable to make in advance. All I have to do is reheat it with a little bit of apple cider. And my guests, I think I just whipped it up in the few minutes before they got there. A little more pureeing. Get my exercise for the day. And just, you'll see at the bottom, just make sure you get all of it. I don't want to waste a drop. Put that together and just, you'll see really great texture, wonderful flavors. Just a little taste, make sure it's really good. So delicious. Then, before dinner, all you have to do is spoon the celery root and apple puree into a saucepan, add a little apple cider or water, reheat it slowly over low heat, pour it into a serving dish, just a sprinkle of salt, and it's ready. People are really gonna love that celery root and apple puree. Okay, back to the potatoes. So the potatoes are cooked. Test them with a knife, make sure they're perfectly cooked. And they are. So I'm just gonna drain them. Ooh, nice steam bath. Okay, at this point, basically most people would use a potato masher or a food mill, but I'm gonna do them in an electric mixer, and they come out really creamy and chunky at the same time. So good. I'll put them in the bowl of an electric mixer, turn it on low speed for a few seconds just to break them up. Then slowly add a hot mixture of 1 cup of whole milk and 6 tablespoons of melted butter. This makes the potatoes really creamy. Then I'll add 1/2 cup of sour cream, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Give it a final mix and the potatoes are done. So once you've nailed the classic recipe for mashed potatoes, you can use it for all kinds of incredible variations. Let me tell you about some of mine. Idea 1, add 3 ounces of room temperature white truffle butter to the mashed potatoes. Mix it in, and classic mashed potatoes become truffle mashed potatoes. It's so luxurious. Idea 2. Add half a cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese, and you have Parmesan mashed potatoes, spicy and delicious. Idea 3. Into a pan, just add half a cup of garlic cloves to half a cup of olive oil. Bring it to a boil. Lower the heat and simmer it for 20 minutes until the garlic is soft and just lightly browned. Then turn off the heat and let it cool. After 20 minutes, add the tender garlic cloves to the mashed potatoes along with 3 tablespoons of the garlic oil. Mix them in and wow, really garlicky mashed potatoes. That's 3 variations that everyone will love. But don't forget the classic. It's really good too. I just can't help myself. I have to try it. It is. It's creamy and chunky. You can really taste a little sour cream. So good. Bobby and I are co-hosting Thanksgiving dinner next week, and to leave nothing to chance, Bobby always does, but I don't. We're road testing all the recipes in advance, so including Bobby's 11-layer potato gratin.
Yes.
Do you actually count the layers?
Let's put it this way. The number 11 is basically the way I measure. It's kind of 11.
It's a figure of speech.
It just gives you like a sense of what it's going to look like.
Okay,
Lots
great.
of layers of potatoes, and the great thing about this is that it's really less than a handful of ingredients. It's Idaho potatoes that have been peeled and sliced very thinly on a mandolin.
And I love that you're drying them.
And I'm drying them, right?
Yeah.
Get a little starch out, and then some heavy cream, some salt and pepper.
Oh, we can do
That's it.
this. That's
Exactly
it? Oh,
right.
fabulous.
So
how do you make this?
So basically, you put 1 layer of potatoes down, and I'm going to ask you to take the cream and just
pour it on?
Pour some cream on top. Exactly.
This isn't even cooking.
No, exactly.
This is great. This is layering.
Pour a little
just
cream.
cream. You tell me how much.
Just to kind of cover the potatoes. Exactly
okay,
right.
just to wet it. Okay.
And then
Nice thing is this is all in advance too, right? This is our theme. Make in advance.
that's perfect.
Is that perfect?
Yep.
Okay.
And then a little salt and pepper.
Okay.
On every layer.
Oh,
okay?
yeah, so
and this
it really
is something
gets
that
flavored.
you're really great at, which is
So
making sure that you
important.
season every layer of everything
In the
you do.
middle, a lot of things are seasoned at the end, and all it just sits on the outside.
Exactly right.
So-
So that's layer 1.
Yeah, layer 1.
So you just keep basically
Sort of layer 1.
So basically, it can be 6 layers, it can be 15 layers. You want to go almost to the top of whatever your casserole dish
Yeah,
is. And
okay.
then what happens is, after we get this done, we put it in the oven covered so that the potatoes actually cook. Exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't dry out.
It doesn't
That's a
dry
good
out,
idea.
but eventually we want the cream to become part of the potatoes and reduce. Beautiful job.
So what's going on here with the shallots?
Yeah, so the shallots,
I have to stir these.
shallots and butter and a pinch of sugar and a little salt and pepper, and we're just gonna caramelize the shallots. And when the gratin is done, we're gonna put the shallots and some fried sage on top.
Ooh, that
Kind of
sounds
bring in
great.
some of those
Oh, yeah.
Thanksgiving flavors,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Okay,
So
more salt?
Yeah, a little more salt and pepper, and basically
Okay.
that's it. And if I just give it the test here, you see,
I know.
you kind of push it down, and you can see the cream coming like sort of
And that's
onto
when
the
you know
sides.
it's right?
That's when you know it's right. And now we can actually put this in the oven.
Okay.
We're gonna cover it for the first 30 minutes, 375 degrees, just with some tin foil. And this will actually help the potatoes cook, get nice and soft.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then after 30 minutes, we'll take the cover off, and it'll get that nice gratin look
That sounds good.
and feel. All right. We're gonna fry some sage. So if you would be so kind as to
I can do that.
pour some canola oil in there. About 350 degrees. And sage is one of those things that, it's so Thanksgiving. Now, the only thing I will caution to anybody that wants to do this is just be careful because, any of the moisture in the sage will make it sort of pop.
I
Yeah,
know.
let's see that. There you go, perfect.
Perfect. Whoa.
It
Gorgeous.
just brings excitement to the kitchen.
You can really smell the sage when it hits it. So how long does this take?
Probably about 30 seconds or so.
Oh, this is fabulous.
It goes very quickly.
And look how easy that was. That was really no big deal.
Not at all.
Right?
Exactly. Get this out of here.
Look at that. That's cool.
There we go.
Fabulous.
And I just always put a little salt while they're still wet from the oil.
So it sticks to it.
So it sticks to
That's
it,
smart.
exactly.
Okay.
I'm gonna grab the gratin.
I smell potato gratin.
Oh, yeah.
And I know. I was involved in making this. It's amazing. And look how gorgeous that is. It's just, that's it.
Exactly.
It's just potatoes and cream, salt
Salt
and
and pepper, and that's it. And it gets that sort of gratin
that gratin
look.
thing. Yeah.
So now what we can do
Okay.
is take some of our shallots, our caramelized shallots. Those are just a little bit of sugar and some butter, and just
so
cook
a little
down
crispy and sweet and caramelized.
very slowly for about 30 minutes.
You have the dump and stir method,
Exactly.
right?
Get them out there.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And listen,
You know, to me, I always say, like, everything good starts with onions and garlic. It's like,
it
you know,
really is.
you know, shallots are just so incredibly savory, especially when you caramelize them like this.
I mean, like, how gorgeous is this?
It just brings it brings an amazing dimension to it.
And then fried sage on
just
top?
some fried sage on top.
I don't know, might not make the table.
I know.
I mean, there's heavy competition here.
Well, if this doesn't make the table, I'm taking this home.
Okay, it made the table. I don't even have to taste it. That's just gorgeous.
And don't forget, the sage is really strong, right?
Okay.
So, you know, we want to caution people just to kind of use a little bit of it. You don't want it to take over the flavor.
Sage is actually one of the strongest. That and oregano, fresh oregano. So do we get to taste this?
Yes, let's taste it.
Wow, how gorgeous. Gentlemen, start your spoons.
There you go.
The shallots are crispy. The potatoes are perfectly cooked. You don't really taste the cream, but it's all part of it.
Oh, it's definitely in there.
It's not that this is going to be on the table. It's going to be the first thing on the table.
All right.
That is so good.
Mashup for my pimento cheese mashed potatoes. I'm making my grandpa's pimento cheese, and I'm using Pam Morrow's mashed potato recipe.
Going to be tickled pink.
The bomb mashed potatoes.
Y'all, years ago, Jeff made his mom's mashed potatoes, and let me tell you, I thought that my grandma made the best mashed potatoes, and she did make the best mashed potatoes. But Pam Morrow's mashed potatoes, let me tell you something, and they're make ahead, okay? Which that did not exist.
No.
So we're gonna get started first with the pimento cheese. I've already cooked the potatoes over here. Geoffrey, I've got him on, guess what? Garnish duty.
Yes.
Right.
He's chopping up some chives and parsley for me. All right, so into the food processor. I'm using sharp cheddar cheese for this. You can use very sharp cheddar cheese, extra sharp, whatever you like. And then I'm gonna add to it some jarred pimentos.
Yep, need
So
that.
pimento cheese was my grandpa's specialty. He made the best pimento cheese. He actually would hook up an old-fashioned meat grinder to the counter and put the block of cheese in it and grind it up.
Cool.
It
By
was
the way,
so
I
good.
know
Mayonnaise.
you feel sentimental, but pimento cheese started. Didn't actually start in the South.
Where did it start?
In New York.
You
I
liar.
don't believe it. Nah,
Well,
no.
I like
added some mayonnaise.
I added mayonnaise, some pickle relish, salt and pepper, and a couple drops of your favorite hot sauce. That's optional, but I think it needs a little bit of a zing there.
Yeah, pickled relish.
Wait, so there's no cream cheese in pimento cheese,
I
right?
don't do cream cheese. Some people do. Everybody's got their own.
It's regional,
I
probably.
very often like to use the processed cheese that comes in the rectangular package. I think that
Nothing wrong
makes
with
a
that.
good pimento cheese. All
Why
right,
no cream cheese? You don't like the tang in there?
I just don't do it. Wasn't how Grandpa did it, so it's not how I do mine.
This is amazing.
So Jeff's mom puts cream cheese in her mashed
Yeah.
potatoes. So in place of the cream cheese, I'm using the pimento cheese. So this is just my little substitution. You know, you could probably do both. And I'm adding it to a stick of butter.
This is crazy.
And I'm gonna save some of my pimento cheese as a topper to my mashed potatoes.
The land of the cow salads, garbanzo
Hey, it's
beans.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, there's-
I'm gonna add some grated garlic. All right, now we're gonna go in and mash this together. Get it nice and mixed.
Crazy. And
Make it
do we
appear.
really need to butter the 13 by 9?
Yeah, you don't want it to stick.
It's Thanksgiving.
I can't wait to try this.
I remember being a kid, and when it was time to mash potatoes, it was always at the very last minute. My grandma would make like 10 pounds of potatoes. And no matter how much she made, we still managed to eat all the mashed potatoes.
Yeah, they're like that, you know?
Yeah, all right, so this little butter pimento cheese mixture is going in. All right, now I'm gonna add in a little bit of hot half and half.
Yeah, just to you show restraint. I love that you're not
Half
doing
and half,
full
not heavy cream.
Could you use
Hey,
yogurt?
Pam uses half and half.
Or almond
That
milk?
means half and half. It's
No.
always in the fridge.
Oh,
Almond milk? What
How
the heck are you
dare
talking
you.
about? All right, and you don't want to over-mix them because then you start to get that wallpaper paste thing going. But there's so much fat in here that you can kind of have at it. All right, these are looking good. So you can do this a day or two in advance. Put it in the fridge. All right, so I've buttered a 9x13. And now look at these. Look at that rich color from the pimento cheese. I'm gonna put it into this baking dish.
It looks like sherbet.
It kind of does, doesn't
Sherbet.
it? So now I'm gonna spread this in our casserole
So
dish.
it looks so light.
It does.
It actually does.
Looks can be
Look
deceiving.
at how it spreads. Listen, this is fun, you know, because
Now
A lot of
melted
times-
butter.
You just deal with your own family recipes. We're literally going around the country and catching all these different flavors.
very cool.
I appreciate
Melted
it.
butter's going on to seep into those potatoes. Now I'm gonna put the rest of the cheese on top. Look at this, how beautiful that is.
Pimento is delicious.
It is.
Great. Pickled.
And it adds a little pickled note to this because there is a lot of fat going on between the cheese and the mayonnaise and the
Look at
butter
that. Look
and the
at that.
half and half. So that little pickly moment
It's like a ball.
really gives you something. Okay, so you could wrap this in some aluminum foil, put it in the fridge, and then just bake it a couple days later. But we're putting it straight in, 350 degrees for 45 minutes. Here we go.
In the
I've got one
I just seen it.
already done.
I seen it.
I looked ahead on the test.
I did. I'm so sorry.
Oh boy.
Be careful.
Girl.
Oh, man.
How about it? How about it? Fromage potatoes.
Thank God
Okay,
for a little
yeah.
fresh herb
Yeah,
on top of this.
little fresh herb. God
Talk
is good,
about
God
irony.
is great. Pass them taters, it's getting late. All right, now we're gonna add the chives.
Gotta have chives. I mean, they make it.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
It's almost like twice baked potato. Twice
Yeah.
baked potato. I'm getting real
Yeah,
into
real
my
good.
West
They-
Virginia.
West Virginia
Oh
on us.
my gosh, guys. Okay.
Isn't it like that though when you go home to visit? You
Yes.
come back with your accent again a little bit.
Oh,
Yes.
always.
Oh, my
Mama.
I've lived in New York for 19 years. I think my accent's only gotten thicker.
Oh my God.
Not as thick as these potatoes.
Trust. If you weren't
Not as
watching,
thick as you'll feel after eating
this
them.
whole thing would be in my mouth. Just one
No, it's
big.
too hot. You know it's too hot.
Is it hot?
Thermal capacity of
It
this
is a little hot.
outrageous.
Okay.
I gotta move my stirring.
Jeff, you have to try it and tell me what
All I
Pam
can say
would
is
think.
to this
that
top.
with the gravy that you make.
Oh, no.
What do we think?
I think
Katie. I was a believer from the jump. Pimento cheese is my alley, man. I love it. And you add cheese to anything, it just ups the ante. But you didn't just add any cheese, you added fortified cheese, okay? And that's what pimento cheese is. It comes with lots of flavor. I even taste that. It was a little bit of garlic for such a big casserole, but it's talking to me.
Oh, wow.
This is delicious. I love a recipe that you like so much you want to go home and play with it, which is exactly what you did with his mom's mashed potatoes, your papa's pimento cheese. Wonder Twins activate. It's so good.
We are making very cheesy potatoes au gratin. Nothing better than just a baked, bubbly, brown, cheesy casserole of potatoes. So I just diced up a whole bunch of russet potatoes, and I actually did not even peel them. I left the peel on, but I scrubbed them really clean and cut them into a small dice. And now I'm gonna make the milk/cream mixture, which is a cup of milk and 3 cups of cream. Bunch of salt, because that is a bunch of potatoes, and pepper. And then what you need to kind of make the sauce thicken while it bakes is flour. So I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of flour. You don't have to add the flour, but the sauce will be a little bit on the thin side when you bake it. So then just whisk it. Okay, that's all whisked together. So I'll bring the dish up, and then all of this gets poured over. Now this bakes for 2 stages. So for the first stage, it's just the creamy mixture, and then in the second stage, I'll add all the cheese on top, okay? Cover with foil. All right, we're gonna put this into the oven. It's gonna bake for the first stage at 400 degrees for 20 minutes. And then we'll peel back the veil of the foil and add all the cheese. I got the potatoes out of the oven temporarily, and I'm just gonna take the foil off, and I'm gonna mix this enormous mountain of cheese that you see. This is a mixture of Fontina cheese and white cheddar cheese and, and like white processed cheese. But basically, you want to add so much cheese to the top of this dish that it would shock your parents. I mean, there's so much cheese here, but that's part of the dish. And actually, it kind of melts and seeps down into the sauce. So this goes back into the 400-degree oven for about 25 to 30 minutes until that cheese is totally melted and bubbly and very brown. Look. Wow. Look at all that cheese. Potatoes.
Crazy potatoes.
I love it.
I'm making scalloped potatoes. They're gonna be cheesy and creamy. To start, I'm thinly slicing 2 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes, and I'm slicing about 1/8 to 1/4 inch slices. All my potatoes are sliced. I'll set these aside and then make my creamy, cheesy sauce. I've got my skillet heated here. I'm gonna add a couple of tablespoons of butter, and I'm gonna let this melt. I'll add 3 tablespoons of flour, and that's gonna combine with the butter to create a roux, and that's gonna thicken the milk to create that rich sauce. I'll whisk the flour into the butter and let it cook for about a minute so that the flour flavor can dissipate. Now I've got 1½ cups of whole milk here, and I'm gonna add it really gradually, whisking continuously to allow it to combine and thicken. And I wanna whisk it constantly to ensure the smoothest, velvetiest texture. That's looking good. So I know this is thick enough when it coats the back of a spoon. Oh yeah, look how beautiful that is. Just like that. I'm gonna season it with salt and pepper. And then I'm gonna get some nutmeg. Just a little bit of freshly grated nutmeg adds a perfect hit of warmth. I'm gonna grate in about 1/4 teaspoon. I've got Gruyere and ham. Gruyere cheese is funky and fancy. I'm gonna add a couple ounces of this to the sauce and let it melt. It smells so good. And potatoes are so mild, they're like a canvas for the cheese. So they need some strong flavors encasing them. I'm ready to assemble. I've got my cast iron skillet, and I've coated on the inside with some butter, and I'm gonna add a layer of potatoes. And I'm not gonna get too fancy or fussy with this. It's just gonna be a rustic layer. These are gonna melt together when they bake and soak up this cheese sauce. And then I'm gonna season them with a good pinch of salt. I'll top with half of my cream sauce. It's just gonna soak right in those layers. Let me spread it around to make sure all the potatoes are coated. And next, all of the ham. Sometimes I think that because there's ham in this, it can be a full meal, just this. But then my conscience kicks in. Some chives for flavor and color. And then the rest of my potatoes, and I'm just spreading them all the way to the edge. This is a great dish to make in advance and bring to a party. It's a crowd pleaser. Everybody always loves the scalloped potatoes, as long as they're salty enough. I finish with the rest of my cream sauce, a sprinkling of that funky Gruyere, and some more chopped chives. Oh, it's so pretty. I could just eat this whole pan. Beautiful. I'll cover this. And now this is gonna bake at 350 degrees for about an hour. And I'm gonna take the foil off for the last 20 minutes so that I can get golden brown and crispy on top. I am ready for this. Oh yeah. That is a beautiful potato situation. Look at how golden it is and it's so melty. I'm gonna taste it. Oh, it's so creamy. It is so flavorful and comforting.
It's really gonna elevate the flavors. I've just been cutting up some peeled sweet potatoes into big chunks, and I'm gonna coat them in cornstarch. I'm cooking these in the slow cooker in a little bit of a liquid, and the cornstarch will help the sweet potato sauce really thicken as they cook. Adding about 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch. And I'm gonna toss the potatoes in the cornstarch until they're all coated. Okay, those are all tossed. So I'm gonna pour these right in. Now I'll add 4 tablespoons of butter and kind of scatter it around. This is such an easy way to make sweet potatoes. I'm gonna add a cup of brown sugar, a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, and you know me, I've gotta add a little cayenne pepper, and then a splash of vanilla. And then I squeeze the juice out of an orange. Oh, the combination of flavors is amazing. And then just a little bit of water, about 1/4 cup, and that just helps the sauce become a little more saucy. Some salt, Okay, now the lid goes on. And I'm gonna cook this for 3 hours on low, and I'll stir it from time to time. Can't believe it, my work here is done. To serve up, I took a pretty platter, tipped out the sweet potatoes, sprinkled over chopped toasted walnuts, and chopped parsley.
We're gonna make some scalloped sweet potatoes with some smoked chilies.
The first thing we're gonna do is peel the sweet potatoes. Make sure you get all of the skin off. Okay. Now we can actually slice the sweet potatoes, and this is known as a Japanese mandolin, Japanese slicer. They're very, very sharp, so you need to be careful. And I'm gonna get these very thin slices of sweet potatoes. Now, once it gets close to the blade, don't take the risk. There's always another sweet potato, but there may not be another finger. See, I stop right about there. Okay, now we have the sweet potatoes and some heavy cream and some chipotle puree. And basically what's gonna happen is we're gonna layer the sweet potatoes into this pan. A layer of sweet potatoes, a layer of the cream. We're gonna flavor the cream with the chipotles until it gets to the top, and then we're gonna bake it in the oven. So let's begin. The first thing we need to do is make the chipotle cream. So we're just gonna pour the cream into this bowl and then put some of the chipotle puree in here. And you know, the chipotles are gonna be smoky, they're gonna be fiery, and they lend itself really well to the sweet potatoes because when they cook, the natural sugars come out of the sweet potatoes, and the balance between the sweetness of the sweet potatoes, the heavy cream, and the smokiness of the chipotles go really well together. Okay, let's begin. So we just layer the sweet potatoes down, and then a layer of the cream. Very thin layer. Just a little bit to cover. And then you just keep repeating the process. Be careful not to put too much cream down, because you don't want it to get too soupy. And then about every 3 or 4 layers, just a little salt and pepper to make sure all those flavors come together. If it's starting to get a little soupy, you can just kind of force the liquid to the top. See that? Okay. We're gonna put this in the oven at 375 degrees for, about an hour. See how it's bubbling on the outside? And this is what you wanna see, okay? How the cream has become part of the sweet potatoes. That means that the cream is reduced in the oven and, sort of thickened and made the sweet potatoes and the cream and the chipotles all just one big, luscious side dish.
So the first thing I'm doing is taking the caps off 16 big mushrooms. Just take them off like that. Mushrooms really can absorb any flavor because they really don't have much flavor themselves. So I'm gonna put about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And then 2½ tablespoons of marsala. It's a wonderful sweet dessert wine. It's very often used in zabaione. You can use sherry if you don't have it. Okay, give it a big toss. And that's gonna really absorb the flavors into the mushrooms. Okay, in the meantime, I'm gonna make the stuffing. 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And 3/4 of a pound of Italian sausage. I'm using sweet Italian sausage, but you can certainly use hot if you like it hot, or combine the two. It's good and messy, but it makes delicious stuffing. I'm just gonna let this cook until it's nicely browned. I'm gonna chop some mushroom stems, the ones that I took off, and just put them right into the cooked sausage. And now lots of flavors. I've got 6 scallions all chopped up. You want this to be really spicy and delicious. 2 cloves of garlic minced. Just give that a quick saute. And now instead of putting bread in this stuffing, I'm gonna put panko in, which is dried Japanese bread flakes. And I just think they give a nice crispness to it, which is just what I'm looking for. So about 2/3 of a cup. That should be good. Give it a big stir. This is really smelling like good stuffing. I smell the sausage and the garlic and scallions and some mascarpone to make it nice and creamy and hold it together. So I need about 5 ounces. I think this package is 8 3/4, so good part of this package. I always use good Italian mascarpone. It makes a difference. Okay, now off the heat, I'm gonna add 2 more things and some salt and pepper. First one is Parmesan cheese. I'm just doing that off the heat because I don't want the Parmesan to stick to the pan. So about 1/3 cup of Parmesan cheese. That should be good. And some fresh parsley. About 2½ tablespoons. And then salt and pepper. A teaspoon of salt. You want this really well seasoned because remember the mushrooms don't have all that much flavor. Kind of like polenta, it absorbs whatever flavor you give it. So that's the stuffing. Looks delicious. Now I'm gonna put it in the mushrooms. Perfect pan, great. And I think I'm just gonna drizzle the extra olive oil and Marsala wine over it. Okay, time to stuff the mushrooms. Just a regular teaspoon, just stuff each one. And so when this bakes, it's gonna be just tender and delicious and spicy with the sausage. Into the oven, 325 degrees. I can't wait till these come out.
Green bean casserole is a classic comfort food, and it's perfect for potluck. I see it at pretty much every potluck we ever have at our church. I've got some butter that I melted in a pan, and I sprinkled in 1/4 cup of flour. And I'll just whisk this together. I'm basically making a roux as the basis for a sauce. And I'll just let that cook around for a couple minutes. And while that's cooking, I'll measure some milk and 1/2 and 1/2, which I think makes for a pretty darn good green bean casserole. I'll do 2½ cups of whole milk and a little 1/2 and 1/2, about 1/2 cup. All right, this is cooked and it's looking good. So I'm just gonna pour the milk and whisk it as it goes in. With the classic green bean casserole, creamy soup is one of the ingredients. So this is sort of to replace the creamy soup. All right, this is gonna take a few minutes to bubble up. I'm gonna go ahead and season it with a little salt, plenty of pepper. Why is black pepper so good in white sauce? They just go together. And a little cayenne. This is another thing that sets it apart from the traditional green bean casserole. It's got a little bit of a kick to it. Now I'll just let this cook for a few minutes and thicken and bubble up. And I'm gonna grate some cheddar cheese. You can also do Monterey Jack cheese, which would keep the dish nice and white and creamy. Okay, now I'll let the cheese melt into the sauce. This is gonna turn into a wonderful, delicious cheese sauce. And then I'm gonna add this skillet full of utter deliciousness. I just fried 4 slices of bacon cut into pieces in a skillet over medium heat for about 2 minutes. Then I added 1/2 large onion that I diced, a finely diced red bell pepper, 3 cloves of minced garlic, then cooked them for 3 to 5 minutes. Oh, this smells so good. Bacon smells good no matter what you cook it with. Then I'll just stir it. And that's the sauce for the green bean casserole. Okay, now for the green beans. I blanched these green beans, and that's part of what sets this apart from your average green bean casserole, which is commonly made with canned green beans. I just blanched the green beans, threw them into boiling water for about a minute, minute and a half, and then I plunged them into ice water to stop the cooking process. And what that did is it just brightened them up, made them really, really beautiful and green, and it's gonna let them stay crisp in this casserole. All right, I'll just even those up, and then the sauce gets poured all over the top. Oh my word, this looks good. And it smells good, and it's gonna taste good. Who knew green bean casserole could be so decadent? Yummy. Then I'll just spread it to even it out. And then for the top of the casserole, I like to use panko breadcrumbs, which are nice and crisp and crunchy. The traditional topping for green bean casserole is usually French fried onions or crumbled potato chips, and I like those too. But this is just a nice updated change. All right, you gotta try this. It is so good. Now I'm just gonna cover it up, stick it in the fridge, and then in the morning before church, I'll bake it.
For holiday meal, my all-time favorite vegetable is butternut squash. I'm gonna roast it with brown sugar and get it really caramelized. It's so good. This is 2 butternut squash cubed. Cube them really large. I think they look better and they roast better. And then I'm gonna add some melted butter. It's a holiday, so you can use butter. Brown sugar, which caramelizes them. Lots of salt. Black pepper. And this is the messy part, clean hands. Just toss it all together. And that's it. I'm gonna roast at a really high temperature, 400 degrees, for about 45 to 55 minutes, and the outside gets really browned and caramelized, and the inside is really juicy and sweet. How easy is that?
My experimental chef in me decided to tackle a very critical classical American dish that I actually never ate growing up. The green bean casserole. Mom, I forgive you. I start by blanching a pound of green beans, and I season it, as I say, with salt. Now, I didn't use fancy little French green beans. I just used straight up good old American string beans. This is just a quick blanch. I go straight into an ice bath. Going straight from hot to cold, you want to make sure you're really cooling down your vegetables. That's how you get that extra crispy texture and you keep that vibrant green color. And then I just spread them out to drain them to get any excess water out of them. Now, there's not only green beans in a green bean casserole, there's also one of my favorite supermarket friends, white button mushrooms. I start with just 12 ounces of cleaned white button mushrooms. And while I slice these, I'll just heat up a tablespoon of butter. Then I just slice up my mushrooms. And then I drop the mushrooms in. And this is nice and easy. Season those mushrooms with a little bit of salt. And to give them a little pizzazz, 2 cloves of garlic, which I'll just grate and drop right into the mushrooms. I'll just let this cook down, and you'll see right away the liquid from the mushrooms will start seeping out. The smell of the garlic with the butter and the mushrooms is just gonna start to really come together. But to give it a little kick, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of Dijon mustard and a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Sift in 3 tablespoons of flour. It's gonna bring this green bean casserole together and give it nice body. Give it a nice stir. I really feel those mushrooms have cooked a little and they're just begging for a little richness. And I've chosen 2 very good weapons, sour cream and heavy cream. Measure out a cup, and maybe a little more because it's Thanksgiving, and drop that right in there. And to top that off, 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. Okay, so once the sour cream and the cream have had a minute to melt down, I'm gonna add my green beans in. I just love how these green beans just liven this up. I really feel this meal coming together. It's one of those times when I take a little Thanksgiving time out and just make a little garnish to make something extra special. So I'll take just 3 shallots that I peeled and broke into rounds. See that? To make them nice and crispy, I'll just drizzle them with a little flour. And to that, for a little panache, a pinch of the cayenne. These crispy little suckers are gonna go on top of our green bean casserole and create that crispy texture. And now, we fry. So I always test one first. And it should come up to the surface, nice and gentle. I love that sound. So you're putting together a green bean casserole. I'm gonna get the turkey. Don't forget those crispy shallots on top though. That's that finishing touch.
Today, I'm making my grandma's candy yams, and I tell you, no holiday will be complete in our family without these yams, and I'm gonna show you how she makes it.
All right, now we're cooking together, but at any point I get ahead of you, don't worry. Just hit pause and catch up to me when you're ready. Before we begin, please preheat your oven to 375. All right, let's get cooking. We got our 4 sweet potatoes. Now you're probably wondering, why are we calling this yams if it's really sweet potatoes? Not many people know this, but you will now. Sweet potatoes and yams are different. I know. Well, somehow, somewhere along the way, they just started calling cooked sweet potatoes yams. But just in case you need to know, these are sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are a lot lighter and the skin is less tough than yams. Yams are darker in color. They're more like of a purple color. And yams are mainly found in tropical areas. The more you know. I love my grandma's candy yams. I mean, I don't even really need dessert. The candy yams are so good. I mean, it's buttery, it's sweet, they're tender. I think everyone comes to Thanksgiving dinner expecting my grandmother's sweet potato pie and her candy yams. That woman knows her way with sweet potatoes. She does. All right, this recipe is super simple, but it has so much flavor. That's what we're known for in the Gullah community. For those of you who don't know, Gullah people are direct descendants of West African and enslaved people. During the slave trade, Africans were sent to southeastern areas of the U.S., even some in the West Indies, and they were just a people of adaptation. They didn't have much to work with being enslaved people, and they just, anything that they were given, anything that they grew, they just made something out of nothing. And I think a lot of that tradition has stayed strong to this day. Now, as I'm peeling my sweet potato, I noticed that there are a little bit of white spots on here. Don't worry, your sweet potato is not going bad. What that is where the starch and the sugar start to try to escape the potato when it comes through the flesh. So don't worry about it. Just use your peeler and go over it. Your sweet potato is perfectly fine. All right, that's done. Let's clean our work area. All right, now let's slice our sweet potato. I like to slice my sweet potato, I would say about this width. It's not about a ½ inch, I would say about a ¼ inch thick. This will ensure that your potatoes cook all the way through. If they're too thick, they're gonna take longer to cook and you run the risk of burning your sugar. My favorite holiday has to be Thanksgiving. And it's, of course it's for the food, but it's the gathering. It's, being able to fellowship with your family members around food and not feeling bad about eating an insane amount of food and sweets and desserts. I guess Christmas is almost the same, but we don't cook as heavy for Christmas. So I try to get it in during Thanksgiving. And I'm putting some of the potatoes in the small baking dish just to get it off the cutting board. But if you don't have like this pretty cute 2-quart dish, you can always use a small baking dish. It's a little thicker. And we're gonna put our last potato in the dish. I know you're probably thinking that this looks like a lot, it may overflow, and it won't. Because as the potato cooks, it will shrink in size. All right, let's head over to the stove. All right, now we're gonna make the sauce for our candied yams. Turn the heat on under a saucepan. I'd say on medium. Let's melt 1 stick of salted butter. And you can help move it along by taking like a butter knife and just swishing it around your saucepan. All right, so if you do not have salted butter at home, that's okay. Just use 1 stick of unsalted butter and add a pinch of salt. The butter has melted, and now we're gonna add 2 cups of granulated sugar. It's candy yam, so we need the sugar. Okay, I'm gonna use a spoon and just mix the butter with the sugar. Okay. While this melts, grab 1 20-ounce can of crushed pineapples. I have a strainer here. I'm gonna use just some of the juice and pineapples from this can. Okay, I'd say half the can. Add the juice to the pot, as well as the pineapples. Give it a stir. And you'll start to notice that the sugar is melting down. And eventually, it'll become this syrupy consistency. Okay. Let's add a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of cloves, and a pinch of salt. Give it a stir. Now we're gonna bring our mixture to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, we're gonna turn the heat off, add a teaspoon of vanilla, and then pour this stuff on top of our sweet potatoes. All right, it's boiling. Give it a little stir. Turn your heat off. Now add your teaspoon of vanilla extract. I like to add vanilla extract after I turn off the heat because vanilla extract, of course, has alcohol. So you don't want the alcohol to burn off. So always add your vanilla after the heat is off. Move your potatoes on a flat surface. Grab your mitts because your pot should be hot. And pour the sauce right on top of the sweet potatoes. Oh yeah, that's it. Okay. Grab some foil, cover, and we're gonna let it bake in the oven at 375 for about 45 minutes. Okay. All right, hit pause and I'll see you back here in about 45 minutes. All right, it's been 45 minutes. Let's remove the foil. Grab your mitts. Ooh, it's pretty. All right. We're gonna let that cook for an additional 20 to 25 minutes until the yams or sweet potatoes are tender and everything is nice and caramelized. Hit pause and meet me back here then. All right, it's been 25 minutes. Let's remove our candied, now they're candied yams from the oven. Oh, look at that. Nice and bubbly and caramelized. Look at that. Grandma's candy yams. And I can't wait to try it. Let's take a taste. Ooh, hoo, hoo. I like it with a lot of juice. You gotta get that juice from the bottom. That's what my grandma says. Oh, that looks good. That looks good. Let's taste. I mean, these yams, they're tender, sweet potatoes, but now they're candy yams. So now it's okay for us to call them candied yams. It's tender, buttery, cinnamony. I mean, it's a little sweet. It's not too overpowering. And I taste the natural sweetness of the sweet potatoes. And then there's the pineapple. Just, oh my goodness. And then the pineapples, it's a twist. And that's my grandmother's signature. It's the pineapples. Now you guys have our family secret. Thanks for taking my class. I hope you had fun with me because I surely have fun with you. Bookmark this recipe and add it to your favorites, and make sure you check out my other Southern Thanksgiving recipes right here on Food Network Kitchen. I'll see y'all again next time. I'm gonna make a green bean casserole, but I'm gonna make it my way. All right, I'm gonna thinly slice 1 large red onion, and I'm gonna marinate it or have it sit in buttermilk for a couple of hours until it's time to fry. And the reason I like for my onions to sit in buttermilk, of course, so the flour and the dredge will stick to the onions. All right, so I have my onions here, thinly sliced. I'm gonna add some buttermilk just to submerge it into the bowl. I'm gonna let these hang out in the fridge until it's time to dredge and fry. All right, put that in there. So my green bean casserole starts off with fresh green beans that I'm snapping. You gotta take the ends off, the rough ends. And I'm just gonna boil them really quick, get them nice and soft. I'm gonna make a bechamel sauce with a little garlic powder, some milk, some sherry, which is typical in low country cuisine. I'm gonna bake it off and put crispy red onions on top. I'm snapping about 2 pounds of green beans. And this will be enough for a 9x13 casserole. I'm gonna boil them for a few minutes till they get a little soft. Remember, I'm gonna finish cooking it in the oven. While that's boiling, I have some baby bella mushrooms here. I'm gonna add it to my casserole. So there's green beans and mushrooms. I'm just gonna saute them in my cast iron skillet here with a little bit of butter. And when I saute them, I'm just gonna draw out some of that water because mushrooms do have a tendency to carry a lot of water. Hit it with some salt, help extract some of the water out of the mushrooms. I know when mushrooms are done cooking when the color starts to turn from this kind of like a grayish white to like a darker brown color. I want to grab my green beans because they're done, drain them and get them on some ice to stop the cooking process. Don't want them to cook anymore because I do have to put them in the oven. So the mushrooms look great. I'm gonna take them out and start my bechamel sauce, which is basically a cream sauce. I'm basically making a cream of mushroom sauce. The start of a bechamel sauce is normally butter and flour, then milk. All right, so I'm gonna add 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of flour. That's how it gets nice and thick. And I'm basically making a roux. Add a little bit of my sherry in there. I'd say about a 1/4 cup of sherry. Typically in a bechamel sauce, you will not find sherry. Just wanna give it a dry type of wine flavor. I'm gonna add in about 2 cups of milk. And you actually wanna use a whisk because you gotta break down the flour, otherwise you'll have clumps of flour in your bechamel. Now I'm gonna season my bechamel with cracked black pepper and some garlic powder. Starting to smell that. It's gonna take about 5 minutes until the sauce gets nice and thick. I wanna actually add back my mushrooms at this time. So this is perfect texture that I'm looking for. It just coats the spoon. I wanna turn it off. Let me grab my onions, super simple dredge. I'm gonna use about a cup of flour, a heavy teaspoon of my all-purpose seasoning. Just in case you don't know, I got some sweet paprika, some onion powder, garlic powder, salt, pepper. So just covering the onions in the flour. I have some oil that I have nice and hot back there in a cast iron skillet. I'm just gonna drop it in the oil, fry it up, super simple. Drop it like it's hot, because it is. They're golden brown. I'm gonna drop them off here. Got my green beans. So I'm gonna assemble the casserole, put the cream of mushroom in there, bake it off for a little bit, and then put the onions on later. I want it to still stay crispy on top. I'm gonna add my cream of mushroom right into this casserole dish. Mix it up. All right, I'm gonna pop my green bean casserole in the oven. Again, the oven is at 350. I wanna let this bake uncovered for about 15 to 20 minutes. All right, my green bean casserole is done. Oh man, look at that. Nice and bubbly and creamy. Ooh, that smells good. Last but not least, add those fried onions on top. And I like a lot of onion. I'm gonna put all of the onions on top there.
I've got 3 friends coming for dinner. We call ourselves the Card Sharks because we play bridge together. And I'm making dinner for us, and then we're gonna play bridge. I'm making balsamic roasted Brussels sprouts. They're so delicious. And the good news is I can make them ahead. So, 1.5 pounds of Brussels sprouts right onto the sheet pan. And I actually even include all the little leaves that sort of fall off while I'm cutting them because they end up being those crispy bits that are so delicious. Okay, next, pancetta, which is Italian bacon. If you can't find it, you can always use regular bacon, but it has a great flavor. And I'm just gonna dice it in a 1/4 inch dice. I actually originally came across this recipe when I went to Tyler Florence's wonderful restaurant, Wayfair Tavern in San Francisco, and he made them, and I thought, I could probably make something like that. So what I do is I roast the Brussels sprouts and the pancetta together with some olive oil, salt and pepper, and then after they come out of the oven, I'm gonna drizzle them with a syrupy balsamic vinegar. It's a great combination. Okay, onto the sheet pan. Okay, now I just need some olive oil, about 1/4 cup. Just drizzle it right on. Lots of salt and pepper, about 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and about 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. And clean hands, just mix them all together. What I'm doing is I'm just preparing them now in advance. Then they're just gonna sit at room temperature until I'm ready to roast them. That's one of the secrets of stressless entertaining. Do as much as possible ahead. So to spread them out, 1 layer, perfect. I'm gonna turn the temperature up to 400 degrees, and the Brussels sprouts and pancetta go into roast for about 20 to 30 minutes until they're crisp and browned. Brussels sprouts are done, they smell fantastic. But I have one last thing to put on them. Good balsamic vinegar, about 1 tablespoon. I'm just gonna drizzle it over the top. See how thick and just wonderful it is. If you can't find the really thick balsamic vinegar, you can actually just take regular balsamic and just boil it until it gets a little bit thick and syrupy. Okay, nice crispy Brussels sprouts and salty pancetta and the balsamic vinegar. Whoa, this is great. Into a bowl. Sounds like they're having a really good time in there.
Creamy green bean salad.
Oh, I like that.
Now, so I've got mushrooms going right here. I cooked them in a little bit of butter. That's gonna give, you know how usually you put in like the can of condensed mushroom soup. And now I'm gonna add to it my celery. I want the celery to still have some bite to it. That's why I'm putting it in after the mushrooms.
Oh, I like this dish already.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna add to it a little bit of garlic and some Worcestershire sauce. I always like Worcestershire with mushrooms. I think it just brings out their meatiness. And some fresh thyme. I'm gonna crank up the heat a little bit on this, and I'm gonna salt it. Salt the mushrooms after you cook them down instead of when you first put them in the pan. Otherwise, it just pulls out the water too fast and you don't get any caramelization. So for our creamy dressing, I'm actually starting off with a little bit of yogurt. So I do a little plain yogurt, and I've got my mayonnaise and some Parmesan cheese.
Gonna be good.
Okay.
It's gonna be good.
And I've got sherry vinegar here.
The best vinegar.
Yes. Some salt.
Don't you find that
And some pepper.
string bean salad cold? The beans, it's one of those dishes, the beans have to be really cold.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you put them back in the fridge and keep them cold, so you get that cold snap.
Totally. And it is important to blanch those green beans.
Yes.
Yes. So I took my mushroom celery mixture out of the skillet and I spread it onto a sheet pan so that it would cool off more quickly. I've got my dressing already here, and I'm gonna go ahead and put these green beans straight in. All right, so green beans go in. Now you see, after I blanched these green beans, I put them onto a paper towel lined pan so any extra water gets absorbed, because water's really the enemy in a salad. You do not want it to be all wet and soggy. It dilutes your dressing. All right, let's put our mushrooms and celery. We've got garlic, thyme going in there. And now, because I like a little bit more fresh crunch, I'm just gonna put some romaine in here as well.
Nice.
Yeah, I like this fresh moment and having the tang of the yogurt and the sherry vinegar. I think it really just wakes everything up on Thanksgiving. And I'm just gonna toss all the dressing, get it nice and coated. And we're just gonna get it all covered. I like Parmesan cheese in there. What do you usually have on a green bean casserole?
Do it.
Well, you got some almonds, so let's put those.
Oh, really? I've never had that on a green bean casserole.
I like little almonds, and you always have the crunchy fried onions.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, so get those right on there. So it's all the elements of the green bean casserole, but made really fresh tasting.
Oh. I could not stop eating this.
I'm going in for the salad first.
I'm not sure what's more important. How welcome all these textures are at the Thanksgiving table. When you're having like purees and turkey and you just, the crunch of this, the vibrancy. Also, everything is individually seasoned. Because you cooked the celery, the mushrooms together, it just built the base. It tastes like a green bean salad, and a green bean casserole then just stops. And it goes in a different direction of a juicy salad with the nuts, the crunchy onions. This is dynamite.
Next thing on the menu is the soul food classic, cream corn casserole. I'm using about 8 ears of corn, fresh corn, that I'm just cutting off the cob, get all that good corn milk or just that starch that's inside the cob. That's gonna help get that casserole nice and creamy. So an easy way to cut the kernel off the cob is to get a big bowl, then get a smaller bowl, flip the bowl over to where the bottom is exposed, and put your ear of corn on top. And just using a chef's knife, just cut down on the cob. And so to get the milk out of the cob, just take the back of your chef's knife and just gently press down on it. You see all that milk coming out? So what I'm doing here is making my creamed corn. My butter is melted. I'm gonna add my corn. Right now I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of whole milk, a few pinches of salt, a little black pepper. Okay. Now I just need this to cook and kind of thicken up. And you know what? A little extra butter ain't ever hurt nobody. I'm gonna actually add a 1/2 stick of butter to this. I want this to be creamy and cheesy and buttery. Start off with boxed corn muffin mix. I'm adding in 1 cup of sharp shredded cheddar cheese. This entire container of sour cream is gonna add a little tang to it. And 2 eggs. And I'm just whisking it until I see no more streaks of that cornmeal. Okay. Now to add that creamed corn. The consistency of this casserole is gonna be a little crunchy from those fresh kernels of corn, creamy, and it's gonna have a nice layer of brown cheese on top. I have a 9x13 casserole dish here that I've sprayed with some nonstick spray. Pour my mixture right into the casserole dish. And last but not least, I'm gonna top it off with some more cheddar cheese. Okay, my oven is preheated to 350. I'm gonna bake this uncovered for about 35 to 40 minutes, or until the top is nice and bubbly and golden brown.
First thing I'm gonna make is mac and cheese, which is traditional mac and cheese with the volume turned up. So to make real mac and cheese, as opposed to the stuff in the box, first thing I wanna do is make a bechamel sauce, which is really a fancy word for white sauce. So I'm gonna heat 1 quart of milk, and then in another pan, I'm gonna melt 6 tablespoons of butter, and add 1/2 cup of flour, and cook them together for about 2 minutes while I'm whisking it. You don't want the butter to burn. This is the kind of sauce you use in a gratin, which sounds fancy in French, but it's perfect for mac and cheese. Okay, now I just want to slowly add the hot milk, and you'll see the whole thing becomes a really nice, thick, light sauce. Add it whisking. Actually, I think you can just... Whoa, that's hot. How about forget slowly? Just dump it all in. Okay, there, that's fast. And now off the heat, just gonna add some flavorings. A tablespoon of salt. It seems like a lot, but remember we're putting a lot of pasta in this. Half a teaspoon of pepper, and half a teaspoon of nutmeg, which is sort of a classic gratin seasoning. I thought it would be really good with mac and cheese. Just whisk it together. I actually think nutmeg brings out the flavor in the cheese, which brings me to the next thing, cheese. Lots of good cheese. So the first thing I'm going to do is put in 12 ounces of good Swiss Gruyere. It's a really nutty cheese, and it's just wonderful in mac and cheese. Okay, a little piece left over for the cook. The second cheese I use is cheddar, and I'm going to use 8 ounces of good cheddar. Now that would have taken a lot of time if I'd done it by hand. Lots of cheese. Okay, then I'm going to put the cheese into the sauce. A lot of cheese in this sauce. But that's why it tastes so good. Okay, just stir it in. So I'm going to combine this now with macaroni, which I cooked. Put that in a bowl. Add the sauce. It's about a pound of macaroni or cavatappi. Okay, mix that all together. Boy, this looks like enough for a crowd. In my experience, everybody loves it, so they eat a lot. So I'm going to pour this into a dish, and I'm going to do sliced tomatoes and breadcrumbs on the top. Gives a nice little crunch and delicious flavor with it. So it really is macaroni and cheese, but for a party. Okay, into the dish. Now, how bad could that be? So, just right on top, really simple. Okay, right on top of the tomatoes and the mac and cheese. I'm going to bake it at 375 for 30 minutes, and it's going to be bubbly and delicious. It's mac and cheese, but better.
I'm making super decadent macaroni and cheese. So I have a box of elbow pasta. You can't go wrong with elbow pasta. I'm going to boil this for 7 minutes until it's al dente. It's going to cook in the oven. So if you overcook your pasta on top of the stove, you're going to have some really mushy macaroni and cheese, and you don't want that. All right, so I'm going to let this boil. And I got some cheese to shred. All right, so I have sharp cheddar and extra sharp cheddar. Instead of using pre-shredded cheese, I just like to shred my own. Old school is the way to go. This shredded cheese will be the base of my cheese sauce. Right, let me pause, my pasta is ready. Right, so I rinsed it with some cold water to stop the cooking process, and just setting it back there. Gotta finish up with this cheese. So what I do is just eyeball it. All right, and I'm using the extra sharp cheddar to cut into small cubes. I'll add the cubes right before it goes in the oven. Gotta make a cheese sauce. I'm gonna head over to my stove. I am making a cheese sauce. The fancy term for it would be a bechamel, which is a roux. It's basically gonna thicken up my cheese sauce. So I have a half a stick of unsalted butter. I'm gonna add to this a few pinches of flour. My grandmother never measured this. She just put it in there. So now I'm gonna add 2 cups of whole milk, a half a cup of heavy cream. Bring this to a rolling boil. It should slightly thicken up as the heat rises. I'm gonna add my sharp cheddar cheese now. I reserved a little bit because I like to top it right before I put it in the oven. This is the consistency I want. Almost like a nacho cheese consistency. Okay, My grandmother does not use cream cheese, but I like using cream cheese because cream cheese just adds a slight tang. I'm gonna add a pinch of salt, pepper, and garlic. Just added my garlic powder. I'm gonna add some freshly cracked black pepper and a pinch of salt. You don't wanna over salt your macaroni and cheese. All right, I'm gonna take it over here. I'm gonna put my elbow pasta in my pot. I'm gonna do all the mixing in this pot. Grab my spoon back here. You hear that? You hear that? You know you got some good macaroni and cheese. Whoo, look at this, y'all. Woo-hoo. All right, so last but not least, I'm gonna add in 2 eggs. I'm gonna whisk it in there with my sour cream. My grandmother doesn't put sour cream. I find that sour cream just elevates that tanginess from the extra sharp cheddar, so I like using that sour cream in there. And this is what makes Southern macaroni and cheese different from other macaroni and cheeses. It's the egg. It's what's gonna hold the macaroni and cheese together. Because essentially, macaroni and cheese is a casserole. Fold in the egg. I have a 9x13 casserole dish that I put some melted butter in there. Just gonna pour that directly to my casserole dish. So now it's the time to add the cube extra sharp cheddar. Last but not least, the reserved sharp cheddar. All right, so I have my oven preheated to 350. I'm gonna bake this uncovered until it gets slightly golden brown on top and all the cheese has melted. Once that happens, I'm gonna get some foil and loosely cover it with foil and bake it for an additional 15 minutes to cook the center. Okay. I'm pulling out my macaroni and cheese. Ooh, I tell you, it smells delicious. You wanna see it? Look. Look at that. It looks like my grandma's. It actually looks a little better. It looks good. Grandma, you didn't hear that. Yours is still good.
Oh, this smells amazing.
All right, y'all ready to dig in?
Yes. The mac and cheese is amazing.
Thank you.
So
Thank
creamy
you.
and cheesy. Wow.
First thing I'm doing is sauteing about 1.5 cups of onions in some butter. And I like to saute them so they're really nice and translucent and maybe just a little bit brown. The butter can brown a little bit, it'll make a dark gravy. And I have here about 2 cups of chicken stock. Homemade chicken stock's great. If you can't, just use a really good canned stock. And I'm gonna pour all of these drippings into that to really enrich it and give it lots of flavor. Now I need a little flour. About 1/4 cup of flour goes in with the cooked onions and butter. And this is what's gonna thicken the gravy. Okay, cook that for about a minute. And then I'm gonna pour in this hot stock. And you'll see it's gonna thicken up beautifully. This is the way to prevent having lumpy gravy, which is everybody's nemesis. So about a teaspoon of salt. I like to use kosher salt. Turn that down. And 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Cognac is really very good brandy from the Cognac region. So you can use any kind of brandy or cognac that you have around the house. Oh, I love the smell of that cognac when it hits the hot gravy. It's just fabulous. I have some leftover white wine, so I'm gonna put a splash of white wine in. That should be good. And then the last thing is a little bit of heavy cream. You can do this or not, but I just think it enriches it enough so that it really gives it special.
We say stuffing is the glue of Thanksgiving, but without gravy.
Where
right?
would we be?
I don't know.
Foundation.
You're gonna just cut up some celery and cut this head of garlic through the middle for 2 halves, exposing all the cloves. Onions in the bottom of the roast, just a big roasting pan. We're gonna act like we're actually roasting a turkey, but we're gonna use turkey parts. You can use a couple thighs, a couple of legs. The garlic we're gonna use these vegetables. This is my favorite thing, is to skip the cornstarch, the flour, all this, and use these roasted vegetables as our kind of really tasty thickener for your gravy.
You did that last year, and I
Yeah.
applied it to my own gravy, and no roux, no thickening. It's just pure, unadulterated flavors.
So in the bottom of the roasting pan, single layer those vegetables.
And don't you think you really avoid that raw flour taste that sometimes gravy gets?
I honestly either end up cooking my roux or flour so long it tastes singed or burned, or it's raw and lumpy. I just remember my mother, like, you know, whisking those lumps of flour, and I just thought, you know what, Mom?
There's got to be a better way, Mother.
No more. So brush your rack a little bit with some oil because the turkey can really stick. And, you know, I mean, I love to eat these wings when we're done. So you get a bonus snack on the side.
Look at that thing.
Yeah, this is big.
It's a pterodactyl.
Salt on there, and just let's pretend you're getting ready mentally for the whole bird also. So just right on top there, the two
Now,
wings.
Alex, could you do this like a week or two in advance and freeze the gravy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You could do this a week or two in advance, totally make all the gravy and freeze it. You could make it a few days before, whatever you like, honestly. And we're gonna roast these wings or legs or thighs, whatever you're using, at 375 degrees until the internal temperature is 160, 165 in the thickest part. I find the wings take about 2.5 hours. I know it doesn't look that way, but to really have them cooked and get that turkey taste, you gotta leave this in the oven.
I got you. Hey, Jeff.
Thank you. Okay, so here we are. In the oven we go. And I am
I just peeped them.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, they're so good, right?
Come on.
Come on. Why don't I just make this ridiculous? Sorry, thank you. Look at this. I mean,
Look at that.
I know, right?
Let me get the hot sauce, some melted butter.
Wouldn't it be fun? Wouldn't it be funny?
Bread.
Blue cheese.
All right, right on the burner with this, right? We're trying to go also fewer dishes all the time, so we'll make the gravy right in the roasting pan. And this, honestly, my mother always did this. She just threw the pan on the burner and she started to make the gravy. So that garlic, those garlic halves, we'll actually leave those to the side. So put the turkey in here.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Right in there. We want to maximize flavor and from the meat, get all we can from it and eat meat on top of it. So we're working OT here. All these just tender roasted vegetables. And by the way, that long cooking time is not just to cook the turkey, it's also to get those vegetables super tender. Some dry sherry.
Oh, yeah.
Right in there.
Oh, sherry.
That's a very Alex Gornish.
It is.
Where's the vinegar?
I always
vinegar
put
on
it
that
in my
table.
Thanksgiving gravy. Dry sherry, always.
Isn't it? It's like lobster bisque and gravy. I gotta have it.
Yeah.
What about those bay leaves?
I know, you're eyeballing the
like
bay
the bay
leaves.
leaves.
You are. I'm gonna add a little bit of mustard. I'm sorry,
Wow.
okay?
This is such
Here we go.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
I am sick of the mustard
You guys
shaming.
leave Alex alone.
I love it.
It's delicious. A little Dijon goes a long way.
Well, here we're looking to give all our
I
gravy.
use it in my gravy.
It's
Yeah.
a thickener,
It's a
too.
natural thickener, totally. The 2 bay leaves in there. You don't have to use them if it upsets you. Now, my mother would mostly use water, or she would boil the neck and the gizzard all day on the stove in some water, and then use that to make the gravy. I think, you know, shortcut, pour a quart of chicken stock in here.
And that's another thing when you're shopping for Thanksgiving, buy extra quarts of chicken stock. You always need more.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. Now, I think, you know, we talk a lot about stock and broth, and I'm trying to get all that flavor from the wings into this. And we're just gonna simmer this. Simmer it nice and easy, slow and low. And then I'm gonna puree the vegetables in the blender together. We'll flake the meat, we'll make sandwiches, we'll eat it. We'll even drop some back in the gravy.
Okay.
And it ends
Oh,
up
there we
like
go.
this.
It looks so good.
Nice and thick. Look at this gravy. It's so good.
Gravy is
I'm gonna-
gorgeous.
and maybe a rinse with a little stock.
Yeah, it needs a little bit of stock because it starts to get thick.
You want to keep some stock hanging around. I keep stock, a little pot on the stove or on the side for the whole meal prep. You like that? She's happy.
Oh, this is a perfect consistency. And the idea that we didn't use any flour or cornstarch in this, it's just naturally thick from pureeing those veggies in it.
Throw some meat in there. You could add a little vinegar if you need it. Adjust it, taste it.
We'll eat Brussels
You guys,
and wine.
this gravy is so rich. That's what I get from it.
Oh, no, she didn't.
And I think it's
Oh.
I think it's from having
going
that
back
bit
in.
of Dijon in there
don't
and
care.
pureeing the vegetables.
Yeah, it's really good. And then I
Super
like to
rich
let
and
a little of
delicious.
that gravy just pool. Now this, a nice classic cast iron skillet about 9 or 10 inches, is perfect for my cornbread for movie night. gonna put that cast iron skillet into the oven and preheat the oven to 425 degrees. We're gonna get that skillet nice and hot so we can drop the butter in there and then the cornbread batter and listen to it sizzle and bubble up on the sides. Forget it. Now, how to make the cornbread? Very simple. We start with some of that buttermilk, 1 cup. That starts the liquid foundation and that wonderful tang factor. And to that, I'm gonna add 2 eggs. Give them a little whisk. Add those eggs in. And then a little bit of milk, 1/3 cup. But the most important wet ingredient of all for cornbread is butter. Just get it melting nice and easy over a low heat. We don't want to brown the butter, just melt it down. Now for the dry ingredients. 1 1/4 cups of cornmeal, 3/4 cup of regular all-purpose flour, and of course, just that touch of sugar, 1/4 cup. Then come the little soldiers of puffiness. A little salt, 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Just whisk together the dry, just to get that cornbread color coming through. And then add the wet, buttermilk, eggs, and milk. Now, I have to tell you something about cornbread. When I was a kid, my mother had a classic American cookbook. This cookbook, on page 495, I still remember, had a classic cornbread recipe just like this one. And I used to measure it out and make it myself and bake it in the oven, all while my parents slept. And they'd wake up, and they'd smell the cornbread, and they'd say, "How did you do this?" And I'd say, "I don't know." But I think that was the first moment that I felt I was gonna become a chef. Okay, so now I've got this stick of butter bubbling, and this was always my favorite part. You can see when you whisk the butter in there, the batter just takes on a silkiness that it didn't have before. So now remember our cast iron skillet. Get it nice and hot in the oven. You can see it's smoking a little bit. That's what you want here. We're talking full-on smoking gun spaghetti western hot. That last teaspoon of butter, and then the batter. It's already taken shape. And in the oven we go. So I will cook that at 425 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes until it's firm in the center. Little onion jam, what do you think?
Yeah.
This is a jam that really hovers between savory and sweet.
Right.
I feel like it could go on something like this or even on some French toast or something like that.
Okay.
Cheers.
All right.
Cornbread with green onions, jalapenos, honey, and cheddar. So I've cut up some green onions, dicing about 2 medium-sized jalapenos. But if you don't like it spicy, remove these seeds, okay? And I'm using a whole lot of butter. Slowly melt 2 sticks of unsalted butter. I'm adding in salt towards the end. I'm gonna get started on my dry ingredients. I'm gonna use a cup of cornmeal, flour, a cup, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. I'm gonna give it that height. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. Whisk that up a little bit, and I'm gonna get started on my wet ingredients. Buttermilk. So the buttermilk is basically gonna make the cornbread tangy, soft, and it's gonna help with that rising with the baking soda. 1/2 cup whole milk. I'm using honey. I think it's a little bit more pronounced than sugar. 1/2 cup. Gotta have something that binds this cornbread together. 2 eggs. Oh, wait, guys, butter. How I forget my butter? Ooh, yes. So I have some cheddar cheese. Growing up in my household, we never put cheese in cornbread. I just thought this would be really cool to add with the jalapenos and the honey. I mean, I love cheese. I'm gonna grate about a cup. I'm gonna eyeball it. Looks like a cup to me. If you wanna add more, by all means add more. Now I'm gonna add my wet ingredients to my dry ingredients. The jalapenos, the green onions. Now I'm not using the entire cup of cheese. I'm only gonna use a 1/2 cup because I'm gonna use the remaining cheese on top. If you overmix, what's gonna happen is you're gonna lose that height and that fluffiness. Just mix it enough until where it's incorporated, that's it. Oh, wow. The butter that was left in the pan is kind of like seeping over the top. If you want to sneak a little peek in the oven, you'll see the butter bubbling on top. Oh my gosh. Make sure no air pockets are in there. I'm gonna bake this at 375 for 25 minutes. Pull it out. After 25 minutes, add the remaining cheese on top and then bake it again for another 15 minutes. Woo! That looks amazing. I'm gonna let it sit. It's gonna create this really nice crispy crust.
How much jalapenos you put in here?
Do you taste it?
I do, and it's not spicy, like hot, but it's good.
I love giving a party for breakfast. But who wants to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and bake? Not me. What I learned when I ran Barefoot Contessa is I can make biscuits the night before and put them in the oven in the morning, and they're fantastic. So I'm gonna make cheddar buttermilk biscuits. The key to making good biscuits is really cold ingredients. Butter, eggs, milk. So I need 1½ sticks of butter. It's incredibly important to have really cold ingredients when you're making biscuits, because when the heat of the oven hits the biscuits, it hits the butter, and the steam causes them to puff up, so they're really light and flaky. Some people actually even also freeze the flour, but I think that's a little extreme. Okay, the dry ingredients. 2 cups of flour. Just want to lighten the flour with your cup. It's really not necessary to sift it. All-purpose flour. That's 1, 2. And because I want really light and flaky biscuits, tablespoon of baking powder. Seems like a lot, but it's really worth it. 1½ teaspoons of salt, so they have lots of flavor. Okay, next for the butter. It's unsalted butter. Put it in with the flour and just mix it until it's about the size of peas. Okay, now buttermilk and egg. Buttermilk's actually great. It keeps baking really moist, and it's low fat too. It's pretty hard to argue when you just put 12 tablespoons of butter in something, but what the heck? So I need 1/2 cup of buttermilk, 1 egg, and both of these are really cold, so it'll keep the butter cold. I'm just gonna whisk them together. Okay, can't make cheddar buttermilk biscuits without good cheddar. I actually love like Vermont cheddar or English cheddar, something really sharp, which you really know it's cheddar. So I need about 1 cup. I'm just gonna grate it on a big box grater. You can do this in a food processor, but I might get the food processor all dirty. I know Stephen loves cheddar biscuits, so I think it'll be perfect for him. So the goal is really light, flaky biscuits with lots of flavor. And the buttermilk is gonna give it a little bit of a tangy flavor, and the cheddar's gonna just give it so much flavor. Okay, that should be just about 1 cup of good cheddar. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix it with a little flour so it doesn't clump in the biscuits. Just a tablespoon or so. And then 1 cup of grated cheddar. And just mix it all together. Okay, so now I'm ready to put it all into the mixture. So you want the butter the size of peas in the flour, and it's perfect right now. So I'm just gonna put in the wet ingredients. So cold buttermilk and cold egg. Just pour it in pretty quickly. And the cheddar mixed with a little bit of flour. Okay, that's it. It's really fast. I'm gonna clear the decks, roll it out. So, little flour for the deck. Make sure they don't stick. And the dough, just dump it right out. I'm just gonna give it a quick knead, not so much that you melt the butter in the dough. Use lots of flour so that they don't stick to the deck. No point in making biscuits if you can't get them off the countertop. Okay, just keep flouring it, making sure it moves around on the deck. So I'm gonna do a rectangle, maybe about 10 inches by 5 inches, and I'll get 8 buttermilk biscuits out of it. So about 3/4 of an inch thick, somewhere between 1/2 and 3/4 of an inch thick. Do it in a nice rectangle like that. Okay, big knife. And sometimes even flour the knife to make sure they don't stick. Cut it right down the middle. This is the part where I couldn't find the cutter, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna cut them up. And they came out really rough and very homemade looking. I love them, just like that. Okay, onto a sheet pan. My friend Steven's really busy and he loves to entertain, and tomorrow I'm gonna show him how easy it is to give a breakfast party. So these are gonna go into the refrigerator, and then tomorrow I'm gonna brush them with egg wash and sprinkle them with cheddar, and they're gonna be so good when they come out of the oven. I'm gonna show Steven that even somebody as busy as he is can make a breakfast party. Are you busy making cheddar cheese?
I am so busy.
I made your favorite buttermilk cheddar biscuits. You're gonna really like them. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna glaze them, put a little egg wash on.
Okay.
How's that?
Tell me about an egg wash.
Egg wash is just an egg and a little bit of water or milk. Just whip it up. And what it does is, it gives a nice brown glaze to the biscuits. You know, like your mother used to make? Did your mother used to make biscuits?
My mother did not make biscuits.
So I'm just gonna brush these with the egg wash. And are you gonna put cheddar cheese on the top?
You ready for a little sprinkling?
Go for it.
Okay. Can there be too much here?
Never too much cheddar. Can I help you?
Yeah.
Okay, right on top. Perfect. Oh, that might be too much cheddar. And how about a sprinkling of salt? Just gives a really nice flavor to it and looks great when it's baked. Okay, into the oven, 425 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes until they're puffed and browned and just delicious. And then we're gonna make a breakfast cocktail.
A breakfast buzz, I love it.
Okay, this needs to be shaken for like 30 seconds. You're on while I get the biscuits out of the oven.
Okay, I've always wanted to do the bartender thing. Those are looking good.
Aren't they great? They smell great.
First thing I need, butter, buttermilk, and shortening. There you go. And nothing makes you happier and is more economical than a good biscuit. But biscuits, I mean, there's just a few principles of doing it right. I'm gonna show you what they are. Now, the flour. Cake flour, that makes it really nice and light and flaky because there's not a lot of gluten. Gluten's what we like in pizza dough. Some regular flour, well, that's heavy. And some baking soda and baking powder, the leavening agents. And we're gonna have two different leavenings that are gonna take place. We're gonna have one right before we bake it. When they sit there on the counter, they kind of rise a little bit, and then also when they're cooking, they're gonna rise up a little bit. We're gonna go with more of the cake flour, nice and light. We're doing 1.5 cups. 3/4 of the AP flour. That gives it some of its structure. There we go. And baking powder, 3 teaspoons of this. And 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt. Let me pulse this just a little bit. Kind of want to incorporate it. Sometimes you'll see it say sift, and that's just so we're incorporating the salt and the baking soda all together, okay? Now, I cube the butter and then put it back in the fridge, so we've got 1/2 cup of butter that's cubed, and this is nice because it'll break up inside of there, so it makes it nice and light and flaky. And the cold butter steams and gives you a little lift in your biscuit. A little lift in your biscuit? Let's see here. Tablespoon, yeah, that looks like about 2 to me. Okay, 2 tablespoons of shortening. Now, don't want to over pulse it, don't want to overwork it. Just want to kind of break up the fat inside of there, the butter and the shortening. It's going to kind of look a little bit gravelly. Okay, excellent. And now, 1 cup of buttermilk, and I know I should be using a wet measuring cup, but I have this one and it's already dirty, so you know, I don't have that many of them. Okay, so a cup of the buttermilk, and this acid in the buttermilk is going to help the leavening agents react. You need a little bit of acid to do that. There we go. Back in. A lot of work, but so worth it. Okay, and just a little bit, just don't want them to get too tough. Perfect. this stuff out of my way. Now I do need some bench flour. There we go. And I do need the deboiling. Now watch this. I'm gonna just mess with this as little as possible, which me is tough because, you know, coming from the background of sauteing and cooking on the line, I like to sit there and push it around. This here, we're just gonna take our time, nice and easy, not do a bunch of work to it. It'll kind of form together on its own. Get everybody out. All right, here we go. So just a little bit of flour on my finger so it doesn't stick. Not messing with it a bunch, not pushing it down too much. I want to form it out to about, I don't know, 11 by, I don't know, sheet of paper, sheet of legal paper. Okay, so 8.5 by 11, somewhere around there. How's that look? Good, don't measure at home. Okay, so then I'm gonna fold this over. Folding it gives it the layers, okay? Check that out. Now fold it down a little bit. Not even getting the rolling pin out on this one. And I'm looking to go maybe about 6 by 6. Huh? Who's doing it now? Let me get a little more flour on my hands. Okay, a little more so it's not too tacky. There we go. Great way to clean your hands off is put a little flour on your fingers. See how it rubs right off? Where's my bench scraper? There we go. And we'll give it a 1. Boom, boom. Look at this. Okay, now here's the cool thing about this. Pull these bad boys out, throw them on the parchment paper, let them set up for about 15 minutes before they go to the oven. This is how you make the biscuits. They're the round biscuits for the Fieri family. Now look at these. They've had a chance to proof up, I guess, a little bit from the leavening agent, the baking soda and baking powder, brushing them with a little bit of butter, and then I'm just gonna sprinkle them with a bit of sea salt. Oh, I know, but you got that nice butter, you got the creaminess of that, and then a little sea salt on top, you'll dig it. And these are gonna go into the oven 500 degrees right off the bat. Right when I throw it in, it's 500 degrees. Now I'm gonna lower it down to about 450 and 16, 18 minutes. Look at those. Look at a little bit of salt on top of them. Now, my biscuit buddy, Geoffrey Campbell, he says you always have to put biscuits in the basket. So he says this is the way you keep them. He's from the South. He says this is the way you keep them steamed up and nice and tender. So biscuits in the basket. Always biscuits in the basket. There we go. And one on my plate.
1 pound of cranberries. 2 cups of sugar is an awful lot. But cranberries, as we well know, extremely tart. And to add a little moisture, 1/3 of a cup of water. Once I've added the water, I can turn the heat up a little bit. And now for the flavor punch. I like the flavor of cinnamon stick more than straight ground cinnamon. I feel like it's mellower. It's like a time release cinnamon capsule. I'm also gonna add a touch of nutmeg. Nutmeg is really powerful. 1/8 of a teaspoon. And a 1/2 teaspoon of ground allspice. Now, for the star, the cranberries. I have here a pound of fresh cranberries. So I'm gonna give it a stir. And I like to make cranberry sauce over a high heat, bring it to a bubble. Now, the longer you cook the cranberries, the more the water in the cranberries is gonna evaporate. And of course, our beautiful cranberry sauce.
Whether it's a small dinner or a big holiday gathering, you really can't go wrong with apple pie. Now this one has a crumb topping and it's drizzled with caramel sauce at the end, so it pretty much takes apple pie to a new level. Now I'm making the crust for the pie. I started with 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I used a 1.5 cup measure. They're so handy. And I'll add a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, and then a teaspoon of salt. This is the pie crust recipe that my friend Sylvia shared with me years and years ago. I added the spices just to give the apple pie a little bit of an edge. I got all that stirred around. Now I'll add 3/4 of a cup of cold shortening. I just cut it into squares. And then the same amount of cold butter. Now I'll just use a pastry cutter to slowly combine the dry ingredients with the shortening and butter. I got most of the big chunks of shortening and butter broken up. So now I'll add a beaten egg. I didn't overbeat it, I just barely stirred it around with a fork. Now I have a little container of ice water, and I'll just add about 5 tablespoons right over the top. Whenever you're making pie crust, it's important for the ingredients to stay really, really cold. Otherwise, everything falls apart. Now finally, a tablespoon of vinegar. The acid in the vinegar just helps the pie crust stay extra tender. Now I'll just stir it around with a spoon until it just comes together. Now I'll just break the dough in half, and then I'll put each helping into its own plastic bag. I'll just form it into a rough ball. And then after I stick it in the bag, I just flatten it slightly, and that'll make it easier to roll out later. Okay, I'll get the second one in. This pie crust is so good without the spices, but it's particularly delicious with. All right, now I'm gonna stick the pie crust into the freezer. This crust is for a future pie, and this one just needs to chill for about 20 minutes. So when the time's up, all I have to do is get the dough out of the bag and onto a floured surface and start rolling. I just keep going until it's slightly larger than the pie pan. Then I roll it around the rolling pin, lift it onto the pie pan, carefully unroll it, and press it in. Then I tear off the excess dough and tuck the edge under neatly and go around pinching the dough to crimp it. I've just been slicing a bunch of peeled apples. I've got about 6 to 7 cups of apple slices in the bowl. And now I'll add a half a cup of sugar. And then to make it a little bit thicker, I'll add a 1/4 cup of flour. To combat all that sweetness, it needs a little salt, about 1/4 teaspoon. And then I'll slice a lemon in half, and I'll just squeeze in the juice of half of it. That is all combined. Now I'll just bring up the beautiful crust, and I'll just pile the apples right in the crust. And when I say pile, I mean pile. I don't believe in having a level apple pie. Okay, just perfect. Now, there are many delicious things about this apple pie, and this crumb topping is one of them. It's butter and flour cut together with some brown sugar, quick oats, which give fabulous texture, and a little salt, all stirred together. Okay, now the crumb topping just gets sprinkled all over the pie. Use my hands. If some of it falls onto the floor, no problem. There's plenty more where that came from. Big pile. Now I'll just use my hands to let it fall into the cracks. Oh my gosh, look at that. Gorgeous. Now the pie goes into a 375-degree oven for about an hour. Then there's another thing to add to the topping before it finishes baking. Half a cup of chopped pecans, delicious. Okay, back in for 5 more minutes. Well, my house smells heavenly, and that means the pie is ready to come out of the oven. It just looks amazing. Oh, nice and golden, those crunchy nuts on top. The crust looks gorgeous. Now to finish it off and to make it caramel apple pie, I'll just crack open a jar of caramel sauce, and I'll just drizzle it all over the pie. My gosh.
So the first thing is half a cup of half and half. And I'm gonna put it into a double boiler. And the next thing is 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree. I've done this with cooking a pumpkin and pureeing it, or a can of pumpkin puree, and believe me, you can't tell the difference. And I can tell you which one's easier. Okay, so that's in. Next ingredient is 1 cup of brown sugar. And you want this sort of lightly packed. It's how brown sugar is generally measured. Right into the pumpkin. 3/4 teaspoon of salt. 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon.
and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. So now I'm gonna make the custard. So I've got 2 egg yolks, and what I wanna do is I wanna warm up the egg yolks a little bit with a pumpkin mixture so I don't end up with scrambled eggs. Just like making a traditional custard. And then pour the whole thing back into the hot pumpkin mixture. See a nice scraper. Just wanna get all of it. And just mix that up. And just cook that for about 4 or 5 minutes. So I'm going to take 1 package of gelatin and just soften it in 1/4 cup of cold water. When it's chilled, the egg yolks are going to help the mousse to set, but the gelatin's going to help it too. Okay, off the heat. I'm just going to add these other ingredients. Mashed bananas. The softened gelatin. And the last thing is orange zest. Okay, I'm just gonna stir this up. So while that cools, I'm gonna whip the cream. So put the whipped cream right in the middle. And then with the spatula, I use a rubber spatula, just go straight down through the middle and then fold it over that way. Straight down through the middle and then right to the bottom of the bowl and then fold it over. Just keep doing that until it's really well mixed. Smells great. And the good news about this is you can make it in advance. Leave it in the fridge for a day and then decorate it just before you're going to serve it. Doesn't look half bad, does it? My experience is nobody remembers what they had for dinner, but they always remember dessert.
All right, straight to the freezer for our dessert. I'm sure you've heard it plenty of times before. When baking, cold is what you need. Freezing is even better. It's gonna make the crust or the cookie crunch light, airy, crisp. It's great. So, in the freezer, I had all of my ingredients for the crust of our tarts, which is our flour, sugar, salt, and then I've got my really cold butter. Get my blade down, and then my lid. Now to this, I'm just gonna add the cold butter after I give it a nice run through. Don't forget the pecans are in here as well. We're gonna make a pecan pumpkin tart with the crust that has pecans in it. Flavors all over the place. All right, so about 6 tablespoons of our rock hard and cold butter. Put that right in, blitz it. And this is gonna be our dough, basically, that we're gonna press into our little mini tarts. All right, now to that, just about 2 tablespoons of water, but watch it for texture. What's most important, it's not too wet. Okay. I've overdone it before, and then I just start adding in all the other ingredients. Okay, that is perfect. I'll show you what it looks like. This is what you are going for here. This right here. So, put that on a nice floured surface, and I'm going to make this into one big ball. Flour on the hands. And I'm gonna turn this big ball into 24 smaller balls and get them into our mini tarts ready for the fridge. Oh yeah, it's gotta cool down again. I'm gonna put my dough balls into a pre-greased mini muffin tin. All right, flour everywhere, but these are ready to go into the refrigerator to cool down again. I put all that body heat on them. And like I said, cool is where it's at when you're baking. I wanna build the custard. So first things first, I wanna go ahead and get my eggs ready to go. I love this recipe. It's a cross between a pumpkin pie and a pecan pie, which I love pecan pie. And I love pumpkin pie too, so. All right, so 1 full egg and 1 yolk. To that, I'm gonna add a tablespoon of sugar. Go ahead and make sure you measure. This is baking. And this is for your friends and family, hopefully, so take a little bit of time to measure away. So that's 1 tablespoon of our sugar. And then a little trick I'll show you. If you're using some dark corn syrup like I am right here, or honey, any other thick liquid, and you're gonna measure it. Just go ahead and spray the measuring cup with a little bit of cooking spray before you pour it in, and everything will come out. Be sure you're measuring properly. All right, so we're gonna put a 1/2 cup of that in. Where's my 1/2 cup? That's gonna go right in. Now watch how easily it pours out. Look at that. Come on, shortcut. And then to this, we're gonna add a 1/2 cup of our pumpkin filling or our puree. Now, you can almost eyeball this, but I'll go ahead and scoop a little bit. This is just gonna be the moisture and the flavor. Let me tell you, the hint of pumpkin in this is great. So a couple of scoops of that, and then just a little bit of vanilla. I'm gonna go ahead and get my whisk out. Now we're not done here. We wanna add some pecans, but really quick, I'm gonna mix this around. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and chop a handful of pecans. Now this is where you just do what you like, but don't go overboard because we still want it to be nice and liquidy. Let me wipe off my knife. Okay, and give these a nice little run. All right, pecans go right in. And this is great because pecans are also in our crust that's in the oven right now, blind baking for us. And see, our filling is done, good to go. Now, blind baking, just so you know, it's basically just getting our crust cooked for us and ready to go, so it's crispy and crunchy, and you know, it's perfectly cooked for what we're about to do to it, which is add the custard. And they're looking good. Come on out, babies. I love this dessert because if you're gonna have a big dinner, you don't feel too guilty when you just pop a few in your mouth. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and fill each of my 24 up and then put a little pecan half on top of each of them and get them back in the oven. Going into my 350-degree oven for a twist on the classic mini pecan pumpkin pies.
Making a cranberry custard pie, and it has this really, really flaky, buttery crust. So I'm gonna start on the crust first, okay? I'm using a 1.5 cups of self-rising flour. In the South, we use a lot of self-rising flour, mainly for biscuits, so it's actually gonna taste like a buttery biscuit. I'm adding in a stick of cold, unsalted butter. I've cut them into cubes so they can break up really easily inside the dough. Add a little pinch of salt in there, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Give it a pulse. So I'm gonna pulse this together, and that looks like that is broken up. Gonna open up my top here and add in a tablespoon of cold water, and I'm gonna slowly pour this in until my dough forms a ball. Now the water amount will change, it just depends on how damp your kitchen is. It's getting there. Yep, there's the ball. Add a little bench flour to my cutting board. I'm pressing down to make a nice little disc because later I'm gonna roll this out and form that pie crust. So I have some plastic wrap here. I'm gonna set this in my fridge and it's gonna chill for about 30 minutes. So my dough has been chilling for 30 minutes. I'm gonna roll it out now. Put a little bit more bench flour on my surface here. Put some more flour on top. And it's important to put flour on both sides. It'll stick if you don't, okay? I have a 9-inch pie dish. What I wanna do is roll it until it's about 12 inches or a little larger than my pie dish. All right, this looks great to me. Put it inside my pie dish. Taking this little excess dough here and just folding it under. The thing about crimping, you can do whatever you feel comfortable with doing. You can make these nice little indents with your finger, like you'll put your finger in here and then you'll crimp it with your thumb, like that. Or if you're more comfortable, like I like to do sometimes, is just use a fork. Put little indents in it just like that. So I'm gonna pop this back in the fridge while I make my filling. Now this custard, all right, simple custard. 2 cups of granulated sugar, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. That's gonna help that custard stay nice and together. And a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now for my wet ingredients. 4 eggs, That's what the base of a custard is. Eggs and sugar. A half a cup of heavy cream. The zest of 1 orange. Citrus and cranberry complement each other really, really well. I'm gonna add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So that's combined. Now I'm gonna add my dry to my wet. All right, that is done. Let me grab my pie crust. So I have 4 cups of thawed frozen cranberries. I'm pouring this at the bottom because once I pour the custard on top, it's just gonna rise to the top. You see how they're starting to float to the top? Yes. So by the time it bakes, we're just gonna have this really pretty layer of cranberries on top. So I got my oven preheated to 350. I'm gonna bake this for about 50 minutes.
When I was at the farm stand and I saw all these gorgeous pears and apples, I thought, I've definitely got to make a pear and apple crisp for my barn warming. So I've got 2 pounds of Macoun apples. I've peeled them and diced them. And I've got 2 pounds of Bosc pears. You can really choose any kind of apples that are firm and crisp. And you want pears that are firm also, but also sort of juicy. You can see when I peel them, they're just delicious. So I peel them, and then I'm gonna cut them in 3/4 inch dice. Take the cores out. It's a little bit of a messy job, but worth it. Okay, so that's 2 pounds of apples and 2 pounds of pears. And I'm gonna add cranberries, 3/4 of a cup of cranberries. They're dried cranberries, and I think they're really sort of autumnal and delicious in this. Now to give it lots of flavor, I'm gonna put in lemon zest and orange zest. About a teaspoon of lemon zest. A teaspoon of orange zest. I like to mix them because one's a little sweeter, one's a little tartar, and this way neither of them really overwhelm the pear flavor. And then some juice. You always want a little juice to mix with the flour and sugar, so it gives a nice sort of sauce when it's cooking. So about 2 teaspoons of orange juice, about 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. Okay. Half a cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of flour. That's just gonna sort of create that little, you know, that delicious goop in the middle. So when the juices of the pears and apples come out, it'll make a wonderful sauce for it. Okay, now some classic apple pie flavorings. A teaspoon of cinnamon. Half a teaspoon of nutmeg. So all of these enhance the pears and the apples, but none of them really overwhelm it. Just to bring out all that sort of gorgeous pear and appleness. Okay, so I think I'm gonna fill the ramekins. So I have 12 small ramekins. They're each an individual crisp. And I think this is gonna be just delicious. I wanna fill them each a little high, because when they bake, you know, they sort of go down. So it's about a cup in each one. And now for the oatmeal crumble topping. Okay, 1½ cups of flour, 3/4 of a cup of light brown sugar, and 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. Okay, half a teaspoon of salt. Salt's really important when you bake, really brings out the flavor. And 1 cup of oatmeal. It has great crunch and flavor. Half a pound of butter. I'm just gonna dice it and then mix it into the topping. Okay, then I'm just gonna blend it all together. So you wanna let this go until it's like in big crumbles, which is right now. It's great. You can smell the cinnamon and nutmeg. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm just gonna pile this on each of the ramekins. Just big crumbles on the top of each one. Now, how good does that look? So I'm gonna put these in the fridge, and then later before the party, I'm gonna bake them 350 degrees for about 45 to 50 minutes until the top is browned and the juice and the fruit is all bubbly. Will you take a crisp and I'll get you a spoon?
You know, it's very good.
One of our favorite recipes, pumpkin pie, which is rich and custardy and has incredible depth of flavor because I make a cooked filling and then I put it into a pie crust and bake and decorate with fresh whipped cream. So to start, I'll take my 1 can of pumpkin and I'm gonna add it to a saucepan. I'm gonna add 1/3 cup each of granulated sugar and brown sugar and 1/4 cup of maple syrup for my 3rd type of sugar. And that's just gonna mean more dimension of flavor. I'll season with a teaspoon of salt. And now I'm gonna cook this, stirring until it's glossy and thickened, and that's gonna allow the sugars to melt and caramelize. This is smelling really good. I'm gonna grab my heavy cream and milk. I'll add 3/4 cup of each of these. And one thing that I find so uniquely delicious about this pie is that you can actually taste the milky richness of it. And I'm using the combo so that it's really rich, but not overly rich. I'm gonna switch to a whisk now so I can whisk it all in. And now I'm just gonna heat this until the milk gets steamy. I don't wanna bring it to a boil and scald the milk. This is looking so creamy already. As this heats up, I'm gonna crack in my eggs. I've got 3 whole eggs and 2 egg yolks for added richness. So now anytime you want to incorporate eggs into a hot mixture like this, you've gotta temper them, and that means warming them up gradually. Because if I were to just crack them in, they would scramble and the texture would not be smooth. I'm gonna grab a ladle. This always takes some coordination, but I'm gonna add a little bit of the hot mixture as I'm whisking the eggs. And this is essentially gonna gradually cook them while maintaining their smooth texture. My egg mixture is warm to the touch, and that's how I know it's ready to be added back into the pot. So with one hand, I'll drizzle it in, and with the other hand, I'm gonna continue to whisk. Perfect. I'm gonna continue to cook this while it thickens, and in the meantime, I'll grab my spices. I've got cinnamon and nutmeg, and pulling out the fancy vanilla beans. Oh, they smell so good. So I'm gonna slice it in half and just scrape out the pods. And I'm gonna use the blunt end of my knife to scrape them out. And this is gonna add fancy vanilla flavor and really pretty speckles. Okay, I'll scrape this into the filling. A little really goes a long way. And then I don't like to add too many spices, just enough to enhance the pumpkin flavor. So 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and 1/4 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. I'll whisk this in. I love being able to see the speckles of the spices and the vanilla bean. My filling is done. I'll grab my crust, which is blind baking in the oven. This is just my go-to pie crust. Flour, sugar, and salt, blended with cold butter, and then formed into a dough with a little apple cider vinegar and ice water. I rolled it out and crimped the edges. This is beautiful. I'm gonna taste the filling before I add it in, just in case I wanna make any adjustments. Yum. There are so many things going on in that filling, and they all just mesh together in the most beautiful way. I'm gonna pour this into the crust, and I'm gonna bake this at 375 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes until the outside is set, but the center is still a little jiggly. That's how you prevent it from cracking. Oh yes, this is perfectly done. It's set around the outside, but it's still a little soft on the inside. I'm gonna let this cool completely, decorate with fresh whipped cream and cinnamon, and then it is gonna be the sweet star of the show.